I hired an escort to save my career. I never expected her to save my life. What happens when a desperate single father makes one reckless decision that changes everything? When a professional arrangement turns into something neither of them saw coming? This is the story of Caleb Dawson, a man who thought he had nothing left to offer, and the woman who proved him wrong in ways he never imagined. Stay with me until the end of this journey. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. You won't believe where this ends up. The rain hammered against the office windows like accusations. Caleb Dawson sat frozen at his desk on the 14th floor of Meridian Tech's Boston headquarters, staring at an email that might as well have been a death sentence. Corporate Gala, Friday, 7 p.m. Business formal. Partners encouraged. 3 words glowed like hot coals on his screen. Partners encouraged. Did you get Harrison's email? Caleb looked up to find Marcus Chen leaning against his cubicle wall, coffee in hand, that knowing smirk already forming. Yeah, Caleb's voice came out flat. You bring in someone? Marcus asked, though the question felt more like a test. Caleb turned back to his monitor, fingers hovering uselessly over the keyboard. Probably not. Man, you should. Harrison's been watching who shows up solo to these things. Last guy who skipped bringing a date 3 events in a row? They passed him over for senior engineer, said he wasn't invested in company culture. Marcus took a long sip of coffee. Just saying. After Marcus left, Caleb sat in the fluorescent silence, feeling the familiar weight settle on his chest. Company culture. The phrase tasted bitter. He'd been grinding 70-hour weeks for 3 years, carrying projects that should have required twice the staff, all while raising Emma alone. And somehow, not having a woman on his arm made him less committed. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma's school. Parent-teacher conference next Tuesday, 3 p.m. Please confirm. He typed back quickly. Confirmed. We'll be there. Another buzz. This one from his sister, Rachel. Can't do Thursday pickup. Derek has soccer. Sorry. Caleb rubbed his eyes. The babysitter rotation was already falling apart, held together with duct tape and favors he'd run out of ways to repay. His parents were 3 hours away in Providence. Rachel had her own chaos. The single dad support group he'd tried once made him feel more alone, not less. The gala was in 4 days. He had no date, no prospects, no time to find either. Tigged. That evening, Emma sat at their kitchen table, tongue pressed between her teeth in concentration, adding purple streaks to a dragon she'd been drawing for the better part of an hour. Daddy, does fire have to be orange? She asked, without looking up. Caleb stirred the pot of mac and cheese, the box kind, the only kind that didn't require actual cooking skills. Fire can be whatever color you want, sweetheart. Miss Patterson said fire is orange or red. Miss Patterson hasn't met your dragon. Emma grinned, that gap-toothed smile that could pull him back from any edge. She went back to her drawing, coloring with the fierce dedication only a 7-year-old possessed. Their apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, kitchen barely big enough for both of them to stand in. The rent was criminal, but it was walkable to Emma's school, and in Boston, that counted as a miracle. Crayon drawings covered the fridge. A basket of unfolded laundry sat in the corner of the living room, 3 days old and growing. Life was a constant negotiation between survival and exhaustion. Is Rachel picking me up Thursday? Emma asked. Caleb's stomach dropped. He'd forgotten to find a replacement. Actually, buddy, I'm still working that out. Can I go to Mia's house? Maybe. I'll call her mom. Emma nodded, satisfied, and returned to her dragon. She didn't complain. She never did. She'd learned early that complaining didn't change circumstances. It just made her dad's face do that thing where he looked tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. After Emma went to bed, Caleb sat on the couch with his laptop, staring at the corporate gala email again. He opened a new search tab, hesitated, then typed, "How to find a date in 4 days Boston." The results were useless. Dating apps he'd deleted years ago. Speed dating events that sounded like his personal hell. Advice columns written by people who clearly had more free time than sense. He scrolled further, and then he saw it. An ad, discreet and professional. Executive companionship services. Elegant, professional, discreet. His finger hovered over the trackpad. This was insane. This was the kind of decision desperate men made in movies, right before everything spiraled. He had a daughter sleeping down the hall. He had a reputation, a career, responsibilities. But he also had 4 days and no other options. He clicked. The website was surprisingly understated. No flashing graphics, no questionable photos. Just clean typography and a contact form. Premier Companions provides professional escort services for corporate events, galas, and social functions. Our companions are educated, articulate, and experienced in high-profile settings. Caleb read it 3 times. Professional, corporate events. That's all this was. Someone to stand next to him for 3 hours, smile at the right moments, and help him avoid Marcus Chen's knowing smirk and Harrison's judgmental roster checks. He filled out the form before he could talk himself out of it. Name: Caleb Dawson. Event: type: corporate gala. Date: needed Friday, November 18th. Duration: 3 to 4 hours. Special requests: professional setting, must be comfortable with executives. He hit submit, then immediately wanted to vomit. What the hell was he doing? His phone rang within 20 minutes. Unknown number. This is Caleb. Mr. Dawson, this is Miranda from Premier Companions. I received your inquiry for this Friday's event. Her voice was warm, professional, completely unflustered, like she arranged these things 100 times a week, which Caleb realized she probably did. Yes, hi, yeah, eloquent as ever. I have a few questions to ensure we match you with the right companion. Can you describe the atmosphere of the event? Caleb swallowed. It's a corporate gala, tech industry. Probably 200 people. Cocktail hour, dinner, some speeches. My boss will be there. His boss will be there. And what are you hoping your companion will provide? The question threw him. I just need someone who won't make me look like an idiot. Miranda laughed, a genuine sound that somehow made this less humiliating. I think we can manage that. Tell me, Mr. Dawson, what's your ideal scenario for the evening? Caleb leaned back against the couch, eyes closed. Honestly, I just want to show up, not be the only person there alone, and leave without my career taking a hit because I don't have a wife or girlfriend to parade around. There was a pause. Then, I appreciate your honesty. I have someone I think would be perfect. Her name is Vivienne. She has a background in communications. She's attended dozens of corporate events, and she's exceptional at reading social dynamics. Okay. She'll need to meet with you beforehand to establish your backstory, how you met, how long you've been together, that sort of thing. Would tomorrow evening work? Tomorrow. This was happening. Yeah, tomorrow works. Wonderful. I'll have her contact you directly to arrange details. Her rate is $800 for the evening, payable in advance. Caleb's stomach clenched. $800? That was groceries for 2 months? That was Emma's winter coat and new shoes. That was the safety net he'd been rebuilding since the divorce. That's fine, he heard himself say. Excellent. Vivian will reach out within the hour. Thank you, Mr. Dawson. The line went dead. Caleb sat in the dark living room, the glow of his laptop the only light, and wondered if he'd just made the smartest or stupidest decision of his life. Vivian texted at 10:47 p.m. Hi, Caleb. This is Vivian from Premier. Miranda said tomorrow evening works for you. I'm free after 6. We could meet at the Thinking Cup on Tremont. It's quiet, good for conversation. Let me know. Her message was direct, warm, no nonsense. Caleb typed back, 6:30 works. See you then. He didn't sleep much that night. The Thinking Cup was exactly as advertised. Brick walls, soft lighting, the kind of place where people had actual conversations instead of just scrolling their phones. Caleb arrived 10 minutes early, ordered a black coffee he didn't want, and sat at a corner table where he could see the door. At exactly 6:30, she walked in. Vivian didn't look like what he'd expected, though he wasn't entirely sure what he'd been expecting. She was probably late 30s, maybe 40, wearing dark jeans and a cream sweater that looked soft and expensive. Her hair was pulled back in a low ponytail, no dramatic makeup, no performance. She looked like someone who'd just come from a bookstore or a yoga class. She spotted him immediately, smiled, and walked over. Caleb? That's me. He stood awkwardly, unsure if he should shake her hand or... She extended her hand. Firm grip, warm palm. Vivian, good to meet you. They sat. Up close, Caleb noticed details. Thin lines at the corners of her eyes that suggested she smiled often. A small scar on her left wrist, the way her shoulders carried a kind of quiet weariness he recognized. So, she said, folding her hands on the table, Miranda said this is your first time using a service like this. Caleb felt heat rise to his face. Is it that obvious? You ordered coffee and haven't touched it, and you've been sitting like you're about to get called into the principal's office. Her smile was kind, not mocking. Relax. This isn't an interrogation. We're just two people figuring out how to help each other. Something in her tone, steady, grounded, human, made his shoulders drop an inch. I don't really know what I'm doing, he admitted. That's okay. That's why I'm here. She pulled out a small notebook. Let's start simple. Tell me about the event. Caleb walked her through it. Meridian Tech's annual gala, the executives who'd be there, the unspoken pressure to appear settled and successful, his boss Harrison, who seemed to evaluate employees based on their relationship status. Vivian listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes. And you're a software engineer? Yeah. Back-end development, mostly cloud infrastructure. How long have you been with Meridian? 3 years. Family? Caleb hesitated. I have a daughter. Emma. She's 7. Vivian's expression shifted, something softer, more careful. You're raising her alone? Yeah. Her mom and I divorced when Emma was 2. She's not in the picture. That's a lot. It was just 2 words, but the way she said them, without pity, without judgment, just acknowledgement, made Caleb's throat tighten unexpectedly. It is, he said quietly. Vivian set down her pen. Okay, here's what I need to know. At this gala, what's our story? How did we meet? How long have we been together? What do we tell people? Caleb blinked. I have no idea. Let me suggest something. We met 6 months ago through a mutual friend, keeps it vague, no one can fact check. We've been taking it slow because you have Emma and you're careful about who you bring into her life. That explains why I haven't been to previous events. Sound good? Yeah, that works. What do I do for work? What do you actually do? She smiled, a real one this time. Tonight, I'm whatever helps you most. But if someone asks, I usually say consulting. It's vague enough to be believable. Consulting works. They spent the next hour building their story. Vivian asked questions Caleb would never have thought of. What kind of food he liked, what he did for fun, where he grew up. She wove those details into a narrative that felt lived in, natural. You grew up in Providence, she said, reviewing her notes. I grew up outside Hartford. We bonded over both being New Englanders stuck in Boston. You introduced me to this amazing Italian place in the North End. I dragged you to a jazz show at Sculler's. We're different enough to be interesting, similar enough to make sense. Caleb stared at her. You're really good at this. I've had practice. There was something in the way she said it. A door quietly closing on a room he wasn't meant to enter. The barista called last order. Caleb glanced at his watch. 8:15. They'd been talking for nearly 2 hours. I should go, Vivian said, gathering her things. My address is in the client file Miranda sent you. Pick me up at 6:15 Friday? Yeah, 6:15. She stood slinging her bag over her shoulder, then paused. Caleb? Yeah? You're going to be fine, I promise. She left before he could respond. Caleb sat alone at the table, his untouched coffee long cold, and realized he believed her. Friday arrived like an execution date. Caleb spent the day in a fog of anxiety. Emma noticed. Daddy, you keep checking your phone, she said over breakfast. Frozen waffles, the only thing he could manage without burning. Sorry, buddy, big work thing tonight. Are you nervous? A little. Emma reached across the table and patted his hand, a gesture so earnest and adult it nearly broke him. You'll do great, you always do. If only she knew how much of his life was held together with hope and duct tape. Rachel picked Emma up at 5. You look terrified, she observed. Thanks. Seriously, what's going on? You've been weird all week. Caleb grabbed his jacket. Just a work event. I'll be fine. Rachel studied him with the laser focus only older sisters possessed. You're bringing someone. What? You're bringing a date. That's why you're acting like you're going to prom. I'm not. Caleb, I've known you for 34 years. You have exactly one face when you're nervous about work, and a completely different face when you're nervous about women. This is the woman face. He wanted to argue. He wanted to lie. Instead, he just sighed. It's complicated. Rachel grinned. Good. It's about time. She kissed his cheek and herded Emma toward the door. Don't screw it up. Vivian's building was in Brookline, a renovated brownstone with window boxes that had probably been charming in summer, but now just held dead plants and November rain. Caleb parked and texted, Here. She emerged 3 minutes later, and Caleb forgot how to breathe. She wore a deep emerald dress that moved like water, elegant without trying too hard. Her hair was down, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. Minimal jewelry, just small earrings and a delicate bracelet. She looked like someone who belonged at galas, someone who moved through these spaces with ease. She slid into the passenger seat, bringing the scent of something light and citrusy. You clean up nice, she said. Caleb was still staring. You look... Wow. She laughed. Wow works. You look good too. He was wearing the same suit he wore to every corporate event, the one he'd bought off the rack at Macy's 3 years ago. But the way she said it made him almost believe it. They drove toward the harbor in comfortable silence. Rain streaked the windows. The city lights blurred into watercolor. You okay? Vivian asked. Nervous. That's normal. But remember, I'm not actually your girlfriend. You don't have to impress me. We just have to look like we make sense together. Do we? She turned to look at him fully. Yeah, Caleb. We do. Something in his chest loosened. The gala was held at the Institute of Contemporary Art, all glass walls and harbor views. Valets in black ties opened car doors. Women in cocktail dresses floated up the steps like expensive ghosts. Caleb's hands were sweating. Vivian looped her arm through his as they approached the entrance, casual, natural, like they'd done this 100 times. Breathe, she murmured. You're the back-end guy who keeps this whole company running. You belong here. They stepped inside. The space was stunning. High ceilings, modern art on the walls, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. A jazz quartet played in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that probably cost more than Caleb's grocery budget. Dawson! Harrison appeared from the crowd, martini in hand, smile sharp as broken glass. His eyes immediately went to Vivian. Harrison, good to see you. Caleb kept his voice steady. This is Vivian. A pleasure. Harrison took her hand like he was appraising jewelry. Harrison Chen, VP of Engineering, how long have you two been together? About 6 months, Vivian said smoothly, her smile warm but not over-eager, though Caleb kept me a secret for a while. Can't blame him, Harrison said, still holding her hand a beat too long. What do you do, Vivian? Consulting, strategic communications. Ah, the mysterious world of consulting. Harrison finally released her hand. Well, welcome to the circus. Caleb, make sure you introduce her around. Networking, you know. He drifted away, already scanning for his next target. Vivian's smile didn't falter until he was out of earshot. Then she leaned close to Caleb. He's exactly as charming as you described. That's him on a good day. I've handled worse. They moved through the crowd. Vivian was extraordinary. She knew exactly when to engage, when to listen, when to laugh. She asked questions that made people feel important without seeming sycophantic. She touched Caleb's arm at all the right moments, a physical reminder that they were supposed to be together. Marcus found them near the bar. Dawson, and you must be the mysterious girlfriend. He shook Vivian's hand enthusiastically. Marcus Chen, I work with this guy. Or rather, he works for everyone while I take credit. Vivian laughed. Sounds about right. Caleb mentioned you. All good things, I hope? He said you make the best coffee runs. Marcus clutched his chest. Reduced to a barista. The truth hurts. They talked for 10 minutes. Easy, light, the kind of conversation that didn't require performance. When Marcus left, Vivian turned to Caleb. He's nice. Yeah, he is. Not everyone here is a shark. No, just most of them. The dinner bell rang, a soft chime that somehow carried through the entire space. People began drifting toward the dining hall. Vivian slipped her hand into Caleb's. It should have felt like part of the act. Instead, it felt like an anchor. Dinner was endless. Course after course of food Caleb barely tasted. Speeches from executives about innovation and market growth. Polite applause at carefully timed intervals. He and Vivian were seated at a table with two other couples from the development team and their partners. Vivian navigated it flawlessly. She asked the woman next to her about her work at a nonprofit. She discussed cloud infrastructure with one of the developers like she actually understood it, and maybe she did. She made Caleb look good without making it obvious that's what she was doing. But as the evening wore on, Caleb started noticing things. The way her smile would flicker just for a second between conversations. The way she'd touch that scar on her wrist when she thought no one was watching. The way her shoulders would tense whenever someone asked her what she did, even though her answer was always smooth and practiced. During dessert, some kind of chocolate thing that probably had a French name, the woman across from them, Angela, leaned forward. "So Vivian, how did you two meet?" Vivian launched into their practice story without missing a beat. Mutual friend, coffee turned into dinner, took it slow because of Emma. It sounded real because they'd made it real. Angela smiled. "That's so sweet. And you don't mind that he has a daughter?" Something shifted in Vivian's expression, too quick for anyone else to catch, but Caleb saw it. "Mind?" Vivian's voice was soft. "No, I think it's remarkable. Single fathers don't get nearly enough credit." Angela nodded. "My brother's a single dad. It's so hard." "It is," Vivian agreed, "but the kids are worth it, always." She wasn't performing anymore. That was real. After dinner, people moved to the terrace for drinks and networking. The rain had stopped. The harbor stretched out black and glittering under the November sky. Caleb and Vivian stood at the railing, apart from the crowd. "You're doing great," she said quietly. "You're doing all the work." "That's what you're paying me for." The words landed wrong. A reminder of what this was. A transaction. A performance. $800 for 4 hours of pretending. Caleb looked out at the water. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Earlier, when Angela asked about Emma, that wasn't an act, was it?" Vivian was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, smaller. "No, that was real." "Do you have kids?" "No, I wanted to. It didn't work out." Caleb didn't push. The way she touched her wrist again told him enough. They stood in silence, the sounds of the party muffled behind them, laughter, clinking glasses, the performance of success. "Can I ask you something?" Vivian said finally. "Yeah." "Does it bother you?" "Does what bother me?" "My age." Caleb turned to look at her, genuinely confused. "Your age?" "I'm 41, Caleb. I saw how those women looked at me tonight, wondering why someone like you would be with someone like me." "I have no idea what you're talking about." "Really?" "Vivian, I haven't thought about your age once. Not when we met, not tonight, not ever." "You want to know what I've been thinking?" She met his eyes. "What?" "That you're the most genuine person in this entire building, that you made this nightmare bearable, that I'm glad you're here." Her breath caught, just slightly, just enough. "You're good at this," she said, but her voice was unsteady. "At what?" "Making people feel seen." "I'm not trying to make you feel anything. I'm just telling the truth." The moment stretched between them, fragile and unexpected. A burst of laughter from inside broke the spell. Vivian straightened, smoothing her dress, a gesture Caleb now recognized as armor going back up. "We should get back," she said. "Yeah," but neither of them moved. "Caleb?" "Yeah?" "Thank you for tonight, for all of it." "I should be thanking you." She smiled, soft, real, nothing like the practiced one she'd worn all evening. "Let's call it even." They walked back into the gala together, her hand finding his arm again, the performance resuming. But something had shifted, something neither of them had planned for. Um, the event ended just after 11. Caleb's face hurt from smiling. His feet hurt from standing. His brain hurt from small talk. They said their goodbyes. Harrison looking smug that Caleb had finally brought someone. Marcus giving him a knowing thumbs up. Various executives nodding approvingly like Caleb had passed some invisible test. In the car, Vivian kicked off her heels and sighed. Those things are torture devices. Why do women wear them? Because men invented professional dress codes. She leaned her head back against the seat. You did good tonight. We did good. Yeah, we did. Caleb drove through the empty Boston streets, neither of them in a hurry to get where they were going. Can I ask you something else? Caleb said. You're full of questions tonight. Is Vivian your real name? She was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. No, she said finally. It's Vivian, no E. Vivian is the professional version. Vivian, he repeated. That's a good name. My grandmother's name. She must have been special. She was. They pulled up to her building. The windows were dark. A single streetlight cast everything in amber. Vivian gathered her things, purse, shoes, the little clutch she'd barely opened all night. So, she said, hand on the door handle, this is where we say goodnight and pretend we'll stay in touch but never actually do. Caleb's chest tightened. Does it have to be? She looked at him surprised. What? I don't know. This felt different, didn't it? Caleb, you hired me. This was a job. I know that, but it didn't feel like one. Not to me. Vivian's expression was unreadable. You don't want to do this. Do what? Get involved with someone like me, someone with my history. What history? You don't know anything about me, about what I do, about why I do it. So tell me. It's not that simple. Why not? She opened the car door. Because I'm not one of your coding problems, Caleb. You can't just debug me and make everything work. That's not what I'm trying to do. Then what are you trying to do? Caleb didn't have an answer. Not one that made sense, not one that wouldn't sound desperate or naive. Vivian stepped out of the car, then paused, leaning back down to look at him one more time. You're a good man, she said quietly. A really good man. Take care of yourself. Take care of Emma. She closed the door. Caleb sat there, engine running, watching her walk up the steps to her building. She didn't look back. He drove home through empty streets, the ghost of her citrus perfume still lingering in the car, and wondered why doing the right thing, letting her go, keeping things professional, felt so completely wrong. Emma was asleep when he got home, sprawled across her bed with her dragon drawing clutched in one hand. Caleb carefully extracted it, setting it on her nightstand, and pulled the blanket up to her chin. Rachel was on the couch, half asleep, some reality show playing on mute. How'd it go? She mumbled. Fine. Just fine. Caleb sat down heavily. I don't want to talk about it. Rachel sat up, suddenly alert. What happened? Nothing. It was fine. The event was fine. Everything was fine. You're a terrible liar. He rubbed his face. I think I made a mistake. What kind of mistake? The kind where you meet someone for all the wrong reasons and realize they might be the right person. Rachel was quiet for a moment, then, Oh, Caleb. It doesn't matter. She's gone. It's over. Is it? It has to be. It was just business, professional, that's all. But it didn't feel like business. No, it didn't. Rachel reached over and squeezed his hand. So what are you going to do? Caleb stared at the dark TV screen, seeing nothing. I have no idea. He didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., he pulled out his laptop and opened his email. Found the original confirmation from Premier Companions. Stared at the contact information. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. This was insane. She'd made it clear. She'd walked away. He should let it go. But he kept seeing the way she'd looked at him on the terrace. The way her voice had changed when she talked about Emma. The way she'd said her real name, Vivian, no E, like it was a gift. He started typing. Vivian, I know this probably breaks every rule of whatever agreement we had. I know you're probably going to read this and think, I'm an idiot. Maybe I am, but I can't stop thinking about tonight. Not the gala, not the performance, but the moments in between, the terrace, the car, the way you said your grandmother's name. I don't know your history, and honestly, I don't care. Everyone has one. Mine includes a failed marriage, a daughter I'm terrified I'm screwing up, and a career held together by anxiety and coffee. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm not even sure I know what I'm looking for. But I know that when I'm around you, I feel less alone. And I think maybe you felt it too. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Delete this and forget it. But if I'm right, if there was even a small part of tonight that was real for you too, maybe we could just talk. Coffee. No script. No backstory. Just us. My number is below. No pressure. No expectations. Just possibility. Caleb. He read it 3 times. Then he deleted it. Then he rewrote it. Then he deleted it again. At 4:15 a.m., he finally hit send. Then he closed his laptop, fell into bed, and lay there staring at the ceiling, wondering if he'd just done something brave or something catastrophically stupid. The answer came 36 hours later. Caleb was at his desk, elbow deep in database optimization, when his phone buzzed with an unknown number. This is crazy. His heart stopped. Another message. Tuesday, 7 p.m., the thinking cup. And Caleb? Yeah? Don't hire me this time. He stared at the screen, reading it over and over, a smile spreading across his face that he couldn't have stopped if he tried. Deal. Tuesday took an eternity to arrive. Caleb second-guessed everything, what he'd wear, what he'd say, whether this was the stupidest thing he'd ever done or the bravest. Emma noticed his distraction. Daddy, you're being weird again. Am I? You keep smiling at your phone. Guilty. Sorry, buddy. Are you texting a girl? Caleb nearly choked on his coffee. What? Mia says when her dad smiles at his phone, he's texting his girlfriend. It's complicated. Emma studied him with those serious 7-year-old eyes that saw too much. Do you like her? There was no point lying. Yeah, I think I do. Is she nice? Very nice. Okay then. Emma went back to her cereal, the matter settled with the simple logic of childhood. If only everything else were that easy. Didn't. He arrived at the thinking cup 10 minutes early again, ordered coffee he wouldn't drink, and sat at the same corner table. Vivian walked in at 7:02, jeans and a sweater again, hair in a ponytail, no performance, no armor, just her. She slid into the chair across from him. Hi, she said. Hi. They sat in awkward silence for 5 eternal seconds. This is weird, Vivian said. So weird. I've been doing this job for 3 years. I've had clients ask me out before. I always say no. Why did you say yes to me? She looked down at her hands, that scar on her wrist catching the light. Because when you wrote that email, you didn't ask me out on a date. You asked me to talk, like I was a person, not a service. You are a person? Not everyone sees it that way. Caleb leaned forward. I need to tell you something. Okay? I have no idea what I'm doing. I haven't dated in 5 years. My life is my daughter and my job, and trying not to drown. I don't have smooth moves or romantic gestures. I'm probably going to mess this up. Vivian smiled, that real smile, the one that made her eyes crinkle. Good, because I'm a 41-year-old woman who makes her living as an escort. I'm probably going to overthink everything, and I have enough baggage to fill a cargo plane. Sounds like we're perfectly matched. She laughed. The sound filled something in Caleb's chest he hadn't known was empty. So what now? She asked. Now we talk. No script, no backstory. Just us. Okay? She settled back in her chair. Ask me anything. Why consulting? What? At the gala. You said you did consulting. Why that cover story? Vivian tilted her head. Because it's vague enough that people don't ask questions, professional enough that they respect it, and boring enough that they change the subject quickly. Smart. I've had practice. How long have you been doing this? The escort work? Most people would have flinched at the directness. Vivian didn't. 3 years since my divorce was finalized. What did you do before? I was a paralegal. Worked at a family law firm in Cambridge. I was good at it. What happened? She touched her wrist again, that unconscious gesture. My ex-husband happened. He was a lawyer at the firm. Charming, successful, checked all the boxes. Turned out he was also controlling, emotionally abusive, and very good at making me think I was crazy. Caleb's hands tightened around his coffee cup. When I finally left, Vivian continued, her voice steady but quiet, he made sure I couldn't work in law anymore. Called in favors, spread rumors, blacklisted me. I was 38, unemployed, and had legal bills that would have bankrupted me twice over. Jesus. A friend suggested escorting. Said I had the right look, the right background, that I could make good money at corporate events. I laughed at first. Then I looked at my bank account and stopped laughing. Do you hate it? She considered the question. No, not always. Some clients are awful, some are lonely. Most are just people trying to get through whatever social obligation requires a +1. It pays my bills. It gave me back some control. But it's not who I am. It's what I do to survive. Caleb understood that better than she knew. They talked for 2 hours. Coffee turned cold. The cafe started to empty. They barely noticed. Vivian told him about growing up in a small town outside Hartford, her grandmother who raised her after her parents died, the scholarship to Yukon that got her out. Caleb told her about Providence, about the software career that was supposed to save him, but sometimes felt like another trap, about Emma's mother who left and never looked back. Do you regret it? Vivian asked. Your marriage? I regret how it ended. I don't regret Emma. You're a good father. I'm trying to be. That's all any of us can do. Try. The barista started stacking chairs. We should go, Vivian said. They walked out into the November night, cold but not quite winter yet. The city hummed around them, cars, voices, the constant motion of Boston after dark. Can I see you again? Caleb asked. You sure you want to? Very sure. Even knowing what I do? Vivian, I don't care what you do for money. I care about who you are. She looked at him for a long moment. Friday, dinner, but somewhere low-key. I get enough fancy restaurants at work. I know a place, best pizza in the North End. Emma loves it. Vivian's eyebrows rose. Emma? If that's too fast. No, She smiled. I'd like to meet her. Yeah? Yeah. They stood on the sidewalk, neither quite ready to leave. Caleb? Yeah? Thank you. For what? For seeing me. The real me. He wanted to kiss her. He didn't. Not yet. There would be time. Friday, he said. Friday, she agreed. She walked to her car, and this time she did look back. Just once. A small wave. A smile that reached her eyes. Caleb drove home with his heart hammering and his mind spinning and the absolute certainty that he'd just stepped off a cliff. He couldn't wait to see where he'd land. Friday arrived with the weight of expectation and the lightness of hope tangled together in Caleb's chest. He'd changed his shirt 3 times before Emma finally looked up from her drawing and asked, Daddy, why are you being weird? I'm not being weird. You keep looking in the mirror. Guilty as charged. He sat down at the kitchen table across from her. Remember how I told you I met someone nice? Emma's crayon paused mid-stroke. The girl you're texting? Yeah, her name is Vivian. She's coming to dinner with us tonight. Emma's eyes went wide. Like a real dinner? With me? Is that okay? She considered this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. What if she doesn't like me? Caleb's heart cracked a little. Buddy, that's impossible. You're the best person I know. What if I say something dumb? Then you'll be normal. We all say dumb things sometimes. Emma chewed her lip, a habit she'd inherited from him. Okay, but I'm wearing my dinosaur shirt. Deal. By 6:30, they were walking through the North End, Emma between them chattering about her science project on volcanoes, while Vivian listened with what seemed like genuine interest. The pizza place, Tony's, a hole in the wall that had been there since the 70s, smelled like garlic and fresh basil and everything good about simple food. "This place doesn't look fancy," Emma observed. "Best places never do," Vivian said, and Emma nodded like this was profound wisdom. They squeezed into a booth. Red checkered tablecloth, candles in wine bottles, Frank Sinatra crackling from speakers that probably predated Caleb's birth. Emma studied Vivian with the frank curiosity of children. "You're pretty," Vivian smiled. "Thank you. I like your dinosaur shirt." "It's a T-Rex. They're the best dinosaurs." "Bold choice. What about velociraptors?" Emma's face lit up. "Oh, those are good too, but T-Rex has bigger teeth." "Fair point." They ordered a large margarita, a small pepperoni for Emma, garlic knots that arrived swimming in butter. The conversation flowed easier than Caleb had dared hope. Vivian asked Emma about school, about her favorite books, about the purple dragon drawing she'd brought to show off. "That's amazing," Vivian said, studying the drawing seriously. "Is the fire purple too?" "Yeah, Miss Patterson says fire should be orange, but I think purple fire is cooler." "I agree completely. Purple fire is much more dramatic." Emma beamed. Caleb watched them together and felt something shift in his chest. Not falling exactly, but leaning. The beginning of trust. "Daddy says you do consulting," Emma said around a mouthful of pizza. Vivian's eyes flicked to Caleb just for a second. "I do different kinds of work. I help people with events and communication." "That sounds boring." "Emma," Caleb started, but Vivian laughed. "Sometimes it is boring, but sometimes I meet interesting people, like your dad." "Is that how you met? At work?" "Through a friend," Vivian said smoothly, and Caleb was grateful for the practiced lie that protected both of them. They ate until they were stuffed. Emma told elaborate stories about her classmates. Vivian shared a heavily edited version of growing up in Connecticut. Caleb just watched, hardly believing this was real. After dinner, they walked along the waterfront. November had turned sharp, but Emma ran ahead anyway, arms spread like airplane wings. "She's wonderful," Vivian said quietly. "She likes you. That's rare." "Kids are good judges of character." "Are they?" Vivian's hand brushed his. "Yeah. They haven't learned to lie to themselves yet." Their fingers intertwined, tentative at first, then certain. Emma ran back to them, breathless. "Can Vivian come over for movie night?" Caleb looked at Vivian. "You don't have to." "I'd love to," she said. They ended up on Caleb's sagging couch, Emma wedged between them, watching Moana for what was probably the 100th time in Emma's young life. Halfway through, Emma's head drooped onto Vivian's shoulder. Vivian didn't move, didn't disturb her, just gently adjusted so Emma was more comfortable. When the credits rolled, Emma was fully asleep. "I should get her to bed," Caleb whispered. He scooped Emma up. She was getting so big. When had that happened? And carried her to her room. Vivian followed, standing in the doorway while Caleb tucked his daughter in, pulling the blanket up to her chin, moving the stuffed elephant closer to her hand. "You're good at that," Vivian said when they were back in the living room. "I've had practice." "Still, not every parent is good at it, even with practice." They stood in his small living room, suddenly aware they were alone. The apartment felt smaller. The air felt charged. "Coffee?" Caleb offered. "I should probably go. It's late." "Right. Yeah." Neither of them moved. "Caleb?" "Yeah?" "This is really nice. Tonight. All of it." "It is. I'm not used to nice." "You should be." She stepped closer. "I'm not good at this. The normal dating thing, the getting to know you part. I'm better at performances." "This isn't a performance." "I know. That's what scares me." Caleb reached for her hand. "We can go slow as you need." "What if I mess this up?" "What if I do?" "Then we'll mess it up together." She kissed him then, soft and tentative and real. Her hand came up to his face, fingers gentle against his jaw. He pulled her closer, careful, like she might break or disappear. When they separated, her eyes were bright. "I really should go," she whispered. "I know. But I don't want to. Stay, just to talk. I'll make coffee." She smiled. "Okay, coffee." They talked until 2 in the morning, sitting on his couch, her feet tucked under her, his arm along the back cushions. She told him about the divorce, the real details this time. The way her ex had systematically isolated her, convinced her she was unstable, made her doubt her own memory. The way leaving had felt like waking up from a nightmare only to find the damage was real. Caleb told her about Emma's mother, Sarah, who'd been 23 and terrified when Emma was born, who'd tried for 2 years before admitting she didn't want to be a mother, who'd signed away custody and moved to California and sent a card on Emma's birthday if she remembered. "Do you hate her?" Vivian asked. "I did, for a long time. Now I just feel sad for her. She's missing out on this incredible person. Emma's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her." Vivian leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never got to have kids. We tried for 3 years, fertility treatments, hormones, the whole thing. It nearly bankrupted us. And then when it didn't work, he blamed me, said I was defective." Caleb's jaw tightened. He was wrong. "I know that now, but for a long time I believed him." "Do you still want them? Kids?" She was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know. That window might be closed. But being around Emma tonight, it reminded me what I was grieving. You're good with her. She makes it easy." They fell into comfortable silence. Outside, Boston hummed its late-night song. Inside, something was building between them, fragile and precious and terrifying. "I should really go now," Vivian said, but she didn't move. "You could stay. I'll take the couch." "Caleb, no expectations, just, I like having you here, in my space, in my life." She lifted her head to look at him. "This is crazy. We barely know each other." "I know, but it doesn't feel crazy, does it?" "No, it feels right. That's what scares me." "Me too." She kissed him again. Longer this time, deeper. His hands found her waist, her fingers threaded through his hair. They were two people tired of being careful, tired of being alone, falling into something neither had planned but both desperately wanted. When they broke apart, both breathless, Vivian pressed her forehead to his. "I can't stay. Not tonight. Emma might wake up and I don't want to confuse her." "You're right. But soon?" "Soon." He walked her to her car, their hands linked, neither wanting to let go. "When can I see you again?" he asked. "Tomorrow? I know it's soon, but tomorrow's perfect." She drove away, and Caleb stood on the sidewalk watching her taillights disappear, grinning like an idiot. The weeks that followed felt like discovering color after years of grayscale. Vivian became part of their routine. Dinners, park visits, quiet Sunday mornings where Emma drew and Vivian read and Caleb pretended to work on his laptop while mostly just watching them both. Emma adored her. Rachel was cautiously optimistic. Marcus noticed Caleb smiling more and asked 0 questions, which was its own kind of friendship. But reality had a way of intruding. It started small. Vivian canceling at the last minute because a client needed her. The way her phone would buzz during dinner and her face would go carefully blank. The night she couldn't explain where she'd been. Caleb knew what she did for work. He'd known from the beginning. But knowing theoretically and confronting it practically were different beasts entirely. One Thursday night, they'd planned dinner. Caleb had gotten Emma to Rachel's early, bought wine, attempted to cook something more ambitious than pasta. 7 o'clock came and went. So did 8. At 8:30, his phone buzzed. "I'm so sorry. Emergency client situation. Can we reschedule?" He stared at the text, chicken going cold on the stove, candles burning down to nothing. "Sure. No problem." But it was a problem. He just didn't know how to say it. This pattern repeated. Missed plans. Vague excuses. The careful way she'd redirect conversations when he asked about her day. 2 months in, it came to a head. They were at his apartment, Emma asleep, Vivian curled against him on the couch. Her phone had been buzzing all evening. She'd been ignoring it. "You can answer that," Caleb said. "It's fine." "Vivian, it's work. It can wait." "Can it?" She pulled back to look at him. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just, you've been distant lately." "I've been busy." "Busy with what?" "With work, Caleb. You know what I do." There it was. The elephant they'd been dancing around for weeks. "Yeah, I do, but we never actually talk about it." Vivian stood up, creating distance. What do you want me to say? That I spent last night at a hotel bar playing girlfriend to a pharmaceutical executive? The Tuesday, I had dinner with a hedge fund manager who tipped me $500 for 4 hours of conversation? That this is how I pay my rent? I don't care about that. Don't you? No. I care that you won't talk to me. I care that you keep parts of yourself locked away like I can't be trusted with them. Because you can't. Her voice rose, then immediately dropped, conscious of Emma sleeping. You have this normal life, Caleb. A daughter, a career, a sister who brings casseroles. I have a job where men pay me to pretend to care about them. Those worlds don't mix. Why not? Because eventually you'll look at me differently. You'll wonder who I was with, what I did, whether I liked it. You'll start to resent me. That's not fair. It's realistic. Caleb stood too, closing the distance between them. I knew what you did when I met you, when I asked you out, when I introduced you to Emma. That hasn't changed. But the reality of it is different than the idea of it, isn't it? He couldn't lie. Sometimes, yeah. She flinched like he'd struck her. But that's my problem to work through, he continued. Not yours. You've never lied to me. You've never pretended to be someone you're not. I'm the one who needs to reconcile what I feel with what I know. And if you can't, then we'll figure it out together. But shutting me out isn't the answer. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to do this. How to be with someone who actually wants all of me, not just the parts I perform. Then let me show you. She collapsed into him, and he held her while she cried. Real tears. Not the controlled kind, the messy kind that came from years of holding too much inside. I'm scared, she whispered against his chest. Me too. What if this doesn't work? What if it does? They stood there in his small living room, holding each other like lifelines, two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole together. That night marked a shift. Vivian started opening up more. She'd tell him about her clients, not the intimate details, but the broad strokes. The lonely divorcee who just wanted someone to talk to. The executive who hired her because his wife had died and he couldn't face events alone. The younger guy who needed a confidence boost before his company's investor meeting. They're not all bad, she said one Sunday morning, coffee cooling in her hands. Most of them are just lonely. They want connection without complications. Do you give them that? I give them the performance of it, but it's not real. What we have, this is real. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. I know. But the universe wasn't done testing them. It came in the form of Miranda from Premier Companions calling Vivian on a Tuesday afternoon while she was at Caleb's place. He heard her side of the conversation from the kitchen. I understand. I know it's lucrative. Miranda, I can't, because I have commitments now. No, not to a client, to someone in my actual life. I understand the contract, but a long pause. Fine. This weekend. But that's it. After this, I need to scale back. She hung up, looking shaken. What's wrong? Caleb asked. They want me for a 4-day corporate retreat. Vegas. High-profile client, $2,500 a day. Caleb's stomach dropped. $10,000. Yeah. When? This weekend through Tuesday. 4 days, 4 nights, with some stranger in Vegas. You should go, Caleb heard himself say. What? That's a lot of money, Vivian. When was the last time you had that kind of opportunity? It's not about the money. Isn't it? You've been talking about wanting to go back to school. This could cover a semester. She stared at him. You're serious. I don't want you to resent me for holding you back. If this is important to you, it's not important to me. You are. Emma is. But we'll still be here when you get back. Vivian crossed her arms. A defensive posture he'd learned meant she was protecting herself. You want me to go so you can prove something, that you're okay with what I do, that you're evolved and understanding. That's not bullshit, Caleb. You're terrified. I can see it in your face. You're imagining me with someone else and trying to logic your way through the jealousy. She was right. He was. Okay. Yes. The thought of you with another man makes me want to put my fist through a wall. But that's my problem, not yours. I don't get to control your choices because of my insecurities. What if I don't want to go? What if I want to choose you? Then choose me. But make sure you're choosing me, not running from an opportunity out of fear. They stared at each other across his kitchen, the gap between them feeling suddenly vast. "I need to think," Vivian said. "Okay." She grabbed her jacket, kissed him quickly, and left. Caleb stood alone in his apartment, wondering if he'd just done something noble or catastrophically stupid. Emma found him an hour later, still standing in the same spot. "Where's Vivian?" "She had to go, buddy." "Is she coming back?" That was the question, wasn't it? "I hope so." Vivian called him at midnight. "I'm not going," she said without preamble. "Vivian, I told Miranda I'm done. With the escort work. All of it." Caleb sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. "What?" "I can't do it anymore. Not while I'm with you. It's not fair to either of us." "You don't have to quit because of me." "I'm not. I'm quitting because of me, because I want more than this. I want a real life, a real relationship. I want to be someone Emma can look up to." "She already does." "Not if she finds out what I really do." "Vivian, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. I've been hiding behind this work for 3 years, telling myself it's empowering, that I'm in control. But the truth is, I've been too scared to try for anything else. Too scared I'd fail. You make me want to try." Caleb's throat tightened. "What will you do?" "I don't know yet. Find a real job. Go back to school. Figure out who I am when I'm not performing." "That's terrifying." "I know, but I'm more terrified of losing you." "You're not going to lose me. Promise?" "Promise." She showed up at his door 20 minutes later, overnight bag in hand. "Emma's asleep," he said. I know. I just wanted to be here. With you. Is that okay?" He pulled her inside, closed the door, and kissed her like she was oxygen. They made love for the first time that night, slow and careful and achingly real. No performance, no script. Just two people choosing each other in the most fundamental way. Afterward, she lay with her head on his chest, his fingers trailing through her hair. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Of what?" "That I don't know how to be normal. That I'll fail at this." "There's no such thing as normal, and you're not going to fail." "How do you know?" "Because you're the strongest person I've ever met. You survived a nightmare marriage. You rebuilt yourself from nothing. You're not afraid of hard things." "I'm afraid of this." "Good. Me too. That means it matters." She tilted her head up to kiss him. "I love you, Caleb Dawson." The words hung in the air between them, terrifying and perfect. "I love you too." They fell asleep tangled together, and when Emma crawled into bed with them at 6 a.m., Vivian was there to make pancakes while Caleb was still stumbling toward the coffee maker. "You stayed over," Emma observed, pleased. "I did. Is that okay?" "Yeah, can you make chocolate chip pancakes?" "Absolutely." Caleb watched them in the kitchen together, Emma on her step stool, Vivian teaching her how to flip pancakes without making a mess, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. The reality of Vivian's decision hit hard over the following weeks. She called Miranda and formally quit. Burning a bridge there would be no rebuilding. She updated her resume, started applying for jobs. Nonprofit work, communications positions, anything that felt authentic. The rejection emails piled up. Every interview that asked about the 3-year gap in her employment became a minefield. She couldn't tell the truth. The lies felt worse. "Maybe I made a mistake," she said one night, laptop open to another rejection email. "You didn't." "I had steady income, Caleb. Now I have nothing." "You have time to figure out what you actually want." "That's easy for you to say. You have a career. And it took me years to build. You're starting over. That's harder, but it's not impossible." She closed her laptop, frustration evident in every line of her body. "What if I can't find anything? What if I end up back where I started?" "You won't. You don't know that." "No, but I believe in you." She looked at him with such raw vulnerability it hurt. "Why?" "Because I see who you are. Not what you've done, but who you are. And that person is capable of anything." Vivian started crying, the ugly kind, the kind that came from deep exhaustion. Caleb held her, and later that night, lying in the dark, an idea began forming. The next morning, he called in sick to work and spent 6 hours researching. Graduate programs in social work, financial aid, scholarships, application deadlines. When Vivian came over that evening, he had a folder waiting. "What's this?" she asked. "Options." She flipped through the pages. Program descriptions, scholarship applications, testimonials from graduates who'd changed careers in their 40s. "Caleb, I can't afford graduate school." "Look at the financial aid. You'd qualify for grants, and there are scholarships specifically for career changers. Even if I got in, I'd still need to work. I'd still need income for rent, food, basic expenses." "What if you didn't?" She looked up. "What does that mean?" This was it, the leap he'd been building toward. "Move in with us." Vivian went very still. "Caleb, your lease is up in 2 months anyway. You're here most nights. Emma loves having you around. It makes sense financially, and it makes sense for us. We've been together 4 months. I know, it's fast. Maybe it's crazy, but everything about us has been unconventional from the start. Why should this be different? Because this is real life, real consequences. If it doesn't work, we can't just walk away cleanly. Who says it won't work? Statistics, logic, common sense." Caleb took her hands. "Here's what I know. I wake up happier when you're here. Emma draws more when you're around. The apartment feels like a home instead of just a place we sleep. Maybe 4 months isn't long enough by some standard rulebook, but I know what I want. I want you here, fully, not just visiting." Vivian's eyes filled with tears. "What if I'm a terrible roommate? What if we drive each other crazy? Then we'll figure it out, together. You're really serious." "Completely." She pulled her hands free and stood, pacing his small living room. "This is insane. People don't do this." "Some people do. Smart people don't. I have a master's degree in computer science. I think that counts as smart." Despite herself, she laughed, then sobered. "What about Emma? Have you talked to her about this?" "Not yet. I wanted to ask you first, but I know what she'll say." "What?" "That Vivian should definitely live with us because then she can make pancakes every day." Vivian covered her face with her hands. "You're making this impossible to say no to." "Good. That's the plan." She dropped her hands. Her face was tear-streaked, but her eyes were clear. "If I say yes, if we need ground rules, I pay rent, I contribute equally, I'm not a charity case." "You're not a charity case. You're my partner. And I need space. I've never lived with someone since my marriage. I need to know I can have my own space when I need it. You'll have your own room, for an office or just to escape when Emma and I are too much. And we tell Emma together. We make sure she understands this is a grown-up decision, not something she needs to manage or fix." "Agreed." Vivian stared at him for a long moment, then so quietly he almost missed it. "Okay. Okay? Yes, I'll move in. I must be out of my mind, but yes." Caleb crossed the room in 3 strides and kissed her, lifting her off the ground, both of them laughing and crying and terrified and hopeful all at once. When Emma came home from Rachel's that night, they sat her down on the couch. "Buddy, we need to talk to you about something," Caleb started. Emma's face went serious. "Are you getting married?" "What? No, not yet. This is... Do you want Vivian to live with us?" Caleb and Vivian exchanged glances. "How did you..." Vivian started. "I heard you talking last time. The walls are thin." Caleb couldn't help but laugh. "Okay, yes, we're thinking Vivian might move in with us. How do you feel about that?" Emma looked at Vivian. "Would you have your own room?" "Yes." "And you'd be here for breakfast?" "Most days, yes." "And you'd help with homework?" "If you want me to." Emma nodded, processing. "What if you and Daddy fight?" Vivian leaned forward. "Then we'll work it out, just like any family. Sometimes people who love each other disagree, but that doesn't mean they stop loving each other." "Did you stop loving your ex-husband?" The question hung in the air. Caleb started to intervene, but Vivian held up a hand. "Yes, I did, because he wasn't kind to me. And when someone isn't kind, love can't survive. But your dad is kind. The kindest person I've ever met. That makes all the difference." Emma seemed satisfied with this. "Okay, you can move in, but I get to help you unpack." "Deal." Just like that, it was settled. 2 months later, on a gray Saturday in February, they packed Vivian's life into boxes and moved her across the city. She didn't have much: furniture that wouldn't fit, clothes, books, a few pieces of art. The accumulation of a life restarted. Rachel showed up with coffee in her truck. Marcus appeared with his boyfriend and made terrible jokes about domestic bliss. Even Emma helped, carrying small boxes and directing where things should go with the authority of someone who'd lived in the apartment her whole life. By evening, they were exhausted and surrounded by half-unpacked boxes and furniture in all the wrong places. "This is chaos," Vivian said, surveying the disaster. "This is home," Caleb corrected. Emma, collapsed on the couch between them, nodded seriously. "Home is supposed to be a little messy." They ordered Chinese food and ate it sitting on the floor, too tired to care about furniture or propriety. Emma fell asleep halfway through her lo mein, curled against Vivian's side. "You okay?" Caleb asked quietly. Vivian looked around the apartment, at the boxes, the displaced furniture, the child asleep against her, the man who'd somehow convinced her that second chances were possible. "Yeah," she said. "I really am." That night, after Emma was in bed and they'd made a dent in the unpacking, Vivian and Caleb collapsed onto their bed, shared space, shared life. "No going back now," she said. "Would you want to?" She rolled to face him. "No, not even a little." "Good." They fell asleep tangled together, and if Caleb woke at 3 a.m. to find Vivian crying quietly in the bathroom, overwhelmed by the enormity of the change, he just held her until the fear passed and the hope remained. Because that's what they did now. They held each other through the hard parts, and somehow, that made all the difference. Living together was both easier and harder than either of them expected. The easy parts were obvious: morning coffee made by whoever woke first, Emma's delighted face when she found them both at breakfast, the way their routines synchronized like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. The hard parts crept in quietly, wearing the disguise of ordinary life. Vivian couldn't find work. March turned into April, and her laptop became a monument to rejection. 43 applications sent, 31 automated rejections, 12 ghosted completely. The interviews she did get ended the same way, polite smiles dissolving when they asked about her employment gap, her stammered half-truths landing like stones in still water. Caleb would find her some nights at 2 a.m., sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, laptop screen casting her face in blue light. "Come to bed," he'd say. "I need to apply to 3 more. There's a posting for a communications coordinator at a women's shelter. That's perfect for me. It'll still be there in the morning. What if it's not?" She'd apply anyway, crafting cover letters that danced around the truth, and in the morning another rejection would arrive. The pattern was destroying her. "Maybe I'm not qualified for anything," she said one Saturday afternoon. Emma was at a birthday party, and they had the apartment to themselves, a rare thing. Vivian sat on the couch, still in pajamas, at 2 p.m., looking defeated. "That's not true." "Then why won't anyone hire me?" "Because you're applying for the wrong things." She looked up, eyes flashing. "Excuse me?" Caleb sat down carefully, knowing this conversation could go sideways fast. "You're applying for entry-level positions in fields you're overqualified for, trying to hide 3 years of your life. Of course they're passing. You look like a flight risk." "What am I supposed to do? Tell them I was an escort? That'll go over great." "No, but you could be honest in a different way. Those 3 years you worked in client relations, high-end service industry, crisis management, reading people, managing expectations. Those are real skills." Vivian stared at him. "You want me to put escorting on my resume? I want you to put your actual experience on your resume without the label that makes people clutch their pearls. That's lying. It's framing. You did provide professional companionship services. You did manage complex client relationships. You did handle high-pressure social situations. None of that is false." She pulled her knees to her chest, a defensive curl. "I don't know. What do you actually want to do? Not what sounds respectable or what you think you should want. What calls to you?" The question sat between them for a long moment. "I want to help people," Vivian said finally. "Women, specifically. Women who've been where I was, trapped, afraid, convinced they deserve whatever shit life hands them. Then do that. How? I don't have credentials. I don't have a degree in social work or counseling. So get one. With what money, Caleb? We've been over this. With financial aid and scholarships and student loans if we have to. You looked at those programs I showed you. You could start in the fall. That's 6 months away. What do I do until then? Sit around feeling useless while you support me? You're not useless. You take care of Emma. You keep this place running. You're building something here. I'm playing house, she snapped. I'm a 41-year-old woman living rent-free in her boyfriend's apartment while he works 70-hour weeks, and I can't even get hired at Starbucks. The words hung sharp in the air. Caleb took a breath, choosing his response carefully. You contribute. Maybe not financially right now, but in every other way that matters. That's not enough for me. I need to feel like I'm building toward something. Then apply to grad school. Stop waiting for permission or perfect circumstances. Just do it. Vivian looked at him, something vulnerable and fierce warring in her expression. What if I don't get in? What if you do? That night, after Emma was asleep, Vivian opened her laptop and pulled up the application for Boston University's MSW program. Caleb sat beside her, close enough to be supportive, far enough to let her own this decision. Personal statement, she read. Describe your motivation for pursuing a career in social work and how your life experiences have prepared you for this field. That's a softball question for you. Is it? How do I write about my life experiences without sounding like a disaster? You write the truth. You don't have to share everything, but share enough. She stared at the blank text box for 5 full minutes. Then she started typing. Caleb didn't read over her shoulder, but he watched her face as she wrote. The way her jaw tightened, the way tears tracked silently down her cheeks, the way she kept typing anyway. 2 hours later, she had a draft. Read this, she said, turning the laptop toward him. He read carefully. She'd written about her marriage, the isolation, the moment she realized she'd lost herself. She'd written about rebuilding from nothing, about the women she'd met working in the service industry who were fighting similar battles. She'd written about wanting to turn her pain into purpose. It's perfect, Caleb said. It's too honest. It's exactly honest enough. She submitted the application at midnight, then immediately closed the laptop like it might bite her. Done. For better or worse. For better, Caleb said, pulling her close. Definitely for better. But the universe wasn't finished testing them. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in May. Vivian's phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Vivian Monroe? A woman's voice, professional, careful. Yes. This is Detective Lisa Chen with the Boston Police Department. I'm calling regarding a case we're investigating. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Vivian's blood went cold. What is this about? I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Would you be available to come to the station tomorrow morning? I need to know what this is about first. A pause. It concerns your previous employment with Premier Companions. We're investigating allegations of sex trafficking and money laundering. Your name appeared in client records. The world tilted. I didn't do anything illegal, Vivian managed. I'm not suggesting you did, but we need to talk to everyone associated with the business. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Can you be here? Do I need a lawyer? That's your choice. But you're not under investigation. We just need information. After Detective Chen hung up, Vivian sat motionless on the couch, phone still pressed to her ear, listening to silence. When Caleb got home 2 hours later, he found her exactly where she'd been, still in that position. Hey, I picked up Chinese. He stopped. What's wrong? She told him. Everything. The call, the investigation, the possibility that her past was about to explode into their present in ways she couldn't control. Miranda's business is being investigated for trafficking, Caleb said, trying to process. The detective didn't give details, just that they want to talk to everyone who worked there. Did you ever see anything that suggested trafficking? No, never. All the women I knew chose to be there, but I wasn't privy to everything Miranda did. What if there were things I didn't know about? Caleb sat beside her, taking her cold hands. Then you tell them exactly that. You tell the truth about your experience. What if they don't believe me? What if this turns into something bigger? Then we deal with it, together. Caleb, this could affect you. Your career. Emma. If this goes public, if people find out what? That the woman I love had a job? That she survived? I'm not ashamed of you, Vivian. You should be. This is going to get messy. Then it gets messy. But you're not doing this alone. That night, Caleb called his sister. I need a favor, he said. Name it. Can Emma stay with you for a few days? There's some stuff Vivian and I need to handle. Rachel's mom radar activated instantly. What kind of stuff? Legal stuff. It's complicated, but Emma doesn't need to be around for it. Is Vivian okay? She will be, but right now she needs space to deal with some things without worrying about upsetting a 7-year-old. Bring her over tomorrow. And Caleb, whatever this is, you don't have to handle it alone either. I know. Thanks, Rach. The next morning, Vivian wore a navy dress and minimal makeup, armor for a different kind of performance. Caleb took the day off work and drove her to the police station. I can come in with you, he offered. No, this is mine to handle. Vivian, I need to do this by myself, please. He kissed her forehead. I'll be right here. Text me when you're done. She walked into the building alone, spine straight, shoulders back, every bit of her escort training deployed for self-preservation. Detective Chen was younger than Vivian expected, maybe mid-30s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. They sat in a small interview room that smelled like burnt coffee and institutional despair. Thank you for coming in, Chen said, pulling out a recorder. I'm going to record this conversation. Is that all right? Yes. Let's start with basics. How long did you work for Premier Companions? 3 years. From February 2022 until February of this year. And what was the nature of your work? Vivian kept her voice steady. I provided companionship services for corporate events, galas, business dinners. Clients hired me to accompany them to social functions. Did these services ever include sexual activity? No, never. That was explicitly against company policy. But you were aware other escorts might provide those services. I was aware some independent escorts do, but everyone I knew through Premier kept it professional. Miranda was very clear about boundaries. Chen made notes. Tell me about Miranda Hayes. What was your relationship with her? Professional. She ran the business, matched clients with appropriate companions, handled bookings and payments. Did you ever witness her coercing anyone into work they didn't want to do? No. Did you ever see evidence of women being forced to work against their will? No. Everyone I knew chose to be there. Did you know any of the women were under 18? Vivian's stomach dropped. What? We have evidence suggesting at least 3 minors were employed by Premier Companions between 2023 and 2024. Did you ever encounter anyone who seemed underage? No, God no. Miranda always said everyone had to be over 21. I never saw anyone who looked younger than that. Chen studied her. You seem genuinely shocked. Because I am. I would never have worked there if I'd known that was happening. Never. Why did you leave the company? Vivian hesitated. This was it. The moment where she either told the truth or protected herself with half-lies. I met someone, she said quietly. Someone who made me want a different life. I quit to pursue that. This person, do they know what you did? Yes, from the beginning. Chen's expression softened slightly. That takes courage, both telling them and them accepting it. He's a good man. Lucky you. Okay, a few more questions. Did you ever handle money directly for the company? No. Miranda handled all financial transactions. Did clients ever try to pay you directly? Sometimes they'd try to tip. I always refused and told them to go through Miranda. Why? Because accepting direct payment could complicate things, create expectations. It was safer to keep everything through the company. They went on like this for 90 minutes, Chen asking questions, Vivian answering truthfully, the recorder capturing every word. When they finally finished, Vivian felt wrung out. Thank you for your cooperation, Chen said, handing her a card. If you think of anything else, or if Miranda or anyone connected to the business contacts you, call me immediately. Am I in trouble? No. Based on what you've told me, you were an employee who kept clear boundaries, but this investigation is ongoing. Stay available. Vivian walked out on shaking legs. Caleb was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his car, and when he saw her face, he immediately pulled her into his arms. It's over, she said into his chest. How bad was it? They think Miranda was trafficking minors. Jesus. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I believe you. Anyone who knows you would believe you. They drove home in silence. Vivian stared out the window at Boston rolling past, wondering how many more landmines from her past were waiting to detonate. Over the next 3 weeks, the investigation became public. News outlets ran stories about a high-end escort service that had allegedly employed underage girls for wealthy clients. Premier Companions was shut down. Miranda Hayes was arrested. Vivian's name didn't appear in any articles, but she lived in terror of recognition. Every time her phone rang, she flinched. Every stranger's glance felt like accusation. I need to leave Boston, she said one night. Caleb looked up from his laptop. What? This city feels contaminated. Every corner reminds me of something I want to forget. I can't move forward here. Where would we go? She registered the we and felt her chest tighten with gratitude and guilt. You have a job here. Emma has school. Rachel's here. I'm not asking you to uproot your life. I know you're not. But if you need to leave, we'll figure it out. Caleb, you can't just... I work remotely 3 days a week already. Meridian's been pushing for more distributed teams. I could negotiate full remote. What about Emma? Kids change schools all the time. She's resilient. You'd do that? Leave everything? He closed his laptop and crossed to where she stood by the window. Vivian, you're not a burden I'm tolerating. You're my partner. Where you go, I go. That's how this works. She pressed her forehead to his. Where would we even go? Somewhere no one knows you. Somewhere you can start completely fresh. Where do you want to live? She thought about it. Somewhere green, somewhere it rains, somewhere that feels like possibility instead of history. Portland, Caleb said. Maine? Oregon. Mountains and coast. Rain 9 months a year. Big enough for opportunity, small enough to feel manageable. And nobody there knows anything about your past. You've thought about this. I've thought about everything that might help you. Vivian kissed him, deep and grateful and terrified. Let's do it. Let's just go. The decision, once made, moved with surprising speed. Caleb negotiated full remote work with Meridian. They weren't thrilled, but he was too valuable to lose. Rachel cried but understood. Marcus promised to visit and made Caleb promise not to become one of those Portland people who won't shut up about sustainability. Emma took it better than expected. We're moving to Oregon, Caleb told her one Saturday morning over pancakes. Emma looked up from her syrup-drenched plate. Where's Oregon? West Coast, near the ocean and mountains. It rains a lot, which means everything is really green. Will I have my own room? Yes. Will Vivian still live with us? Of course, Vivian said. Emma nodded, processing. Can I bring all my drawings? Every single one. Okay, when do we leave? Just like that, their 7-year-old had accepted a cross-country move with more grace than most adults could muster. They spent June packing their lives into boxes. Vivian purged ruthlessly. Everything from her Boston life went into donation bags except for a few photographs and her grandmother's necklace. Caleb kept what mattered and released the rest. Emma sorted her toys into essential, and maybe someone else needs it more. Well, Rachel helped them pack the rental truck on a sweltering July morning. You better call me every week, she told Caleb, mascara running from crying and heat. I will. And send pictures. I want to see Emma's new room, the neighborhood, all of it. I promise. She turned to Vivian. Take care of them. I will. And let them take care of you. You're not in this alone anymore. Vivian hugged her, this woman who'd welcomed her without judgment, and whispered, Thank you. They pulled out at noon, the truck packed with everything they owned, Emma buckled in the back seat with snacks, and her tablet loaded with movies. The three of them pointed west toward something new. The drive took 4 days. They stopped at roadside motels with dubious cleanliness and took turns driving while Emma narrated the changing landscape. Look, Daddy, mountains. Those are just hills, buddy. Wait until we get to the Rockies. How big are the Rockies? Really big. Bigger than buildings? Much bigger. Somewhere in Nebraska, Vivian turned to Caleb during a stretch of endless highway. Are we crazy? Probably. What if this doesn't work? What if it does? You keep saying that. Because I believe it, Emma piped up from the back seat. Vivian, are you scared? Vivian twisted around. A little, are you? A little. But Daddy says being scared means something matters. Your dad's pretty smart. I know. They crossed into Oregon on the fourth day, the landscape shifting from brown to green, rain starting as they descended into the valley. Portland emerged through mist and clouds, the city sprawling between rivers and mountains, urban and wild all at once. It's pretty, Emma said, nose pressed to the window. Yeah, Vivian agreed. It really is. They'd rented a small house in the Selwood neighborhood. 2 bedrooms, a yard with a massive oak tree, walking distance to parks and coffee shops. The landlord met them with keys and left them to it. The house was empty except for the basics, a fridge, a stove, some sad curtains the previous tenant had abandoned. They stood in the living room surrounded by boxes and possibility. Home sweet home, Caleb said. It needs furniture, Vivian observed. It needs everything. But we'll get there. They spent that first night on an air mattress, the 3 of them squeezed together, listening to rain drum against the roof. I like the rain, Emma said sleepily. Me too, Vivian whispered. She fell asleep holding Caleb's hand, Emma between them, and for the first time in months, the knot in her chest loosened. The first weeks in Portland were chaos. Furniture shopping at IKEA, Emma starting at her new school, Vivian navigating a city where she knew nobody and nothing. She got lost constantly. The buses ran on different schedules than Boston. The coffee was aggressively artisanal. People smiled at strangers, which unnerved her until she got used to it. But nobody knew her. Nobody looked at her with recognition or judgment. She was just another transplant in a city full of them, trying to build something new. In August, she got the email. Caleb was working in their makeshift home office, really just the dining room table, when Vivian came in, phone in her shaking hands. I got in, she said. Got in where? Portland State, MSW program. I got in. He was on his feet instantly, pulling her into a hug that lifted her off the ground. I told you you would. They offered me a graduate assistantship, 20 hours a week, tuition waiver, small stipend. I wouldn't have to take out loans. That's incredible. She was crying and laughing simultaneously. Classes start in 3 weeks. Then we celebrate. Dinner out, somewhere nice. Emma gets to order dessert first. Caleb, I'm 41 years old, starting grad school. So most of my classmates will be 23. And you'll have 20 years more life experience than they do. You'll crush it. That night, they took Emma to a restaurant overlooking the Willamette River. Emma ordered chocolate cake before her meal, and nobody stopped her. They toasted with water glasses, and Vivian felt something she hadn't felt in years. Pride. Not performance pride. Not the fake confidence she'd worn like armor. Real pride. The kind that came from earning something through effort and hope and refusing to give up. Graduate school was brutal. Vivian had forgotten how to be a student. The first week she came home crying because she couldn't keep up with the reading. The second week she fell asleep at the dining room table at midnight, highlighter still in hand. Caleb found her there, drool on her textbook, notes scattered everywhere. Hey, he said gently, touching her shoulder. Come to bed. She jerked awake. I need to finish this chapter. You need sleep. The reading quiz is tomorrow, and you'll do better on it rested than exhausted. She let him lead her to bed, too tired to argue. In the dark, she whispered, What if I can't do this? You can. You don't know that. I know you, that's enough. By October, she'd found her rhythm. The material started clicking. She discovered she was good at this, the theory, the practice, the deep work of understanding trauma and resilience. Her professors noticed. Classmates asked her perspective because she brought something textbooks couldn't teach. Her graduate assistantship was with a nonprofit called New Beginnings that helped women leaving abusive relationships. Vivian spent 20 hours a week answering phones, filing paperwork, and occasionally sitting with women whose stories echoed her own. One afternoon, a woman came in who reminded Vivian sharply of herself 4 years ago. Same careful makeup hiding bruises, same rehearsed explanations for injuries, same hollow eyes. My husband didn't mean it, the woman said. He's just stressed about work. Vivian had heard every variation of that script. She'd spoken some herself. "What's your name?" she asked gently. "Amy." "Amy, I'm Vivian. Can I tell you something?" Amy nodded. "5 years ago, I was sitting where you are, making the same excuses, believing the same lies. It took me 3 years to leave and another year to stop making excuses for him to other people." Amy's eyes widened. "You?" "Me. And I know every reason you're telling yourself you can't leave. Money, fear, hope that he'll change, love, all of it. I know." "Did he change? Your husband?" "No, they never do. But I changed. I got out. I rebuilt. And you can too." Amy started crying. The real kind, not the careful kind that doesn't smudge makeup. Vivian handed her tissues and sat with her, not pushing, just present, being what she'd needed and never had. That night, she told Caleb about it. "She reminded me of me," Vivian said. "Same patterns, same fears, but I got to be the person I needed back then. That felt meaningful. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. I think I might actually be good at this." "I know you are." November brought Emma's 8th birthday. They threw a party in their yard, smaller than Boston parties would have been. Mostly kids from Emma's new class, and a couple of friendly neighbors. Emma ran around with chocolate cake on her face, while Vivian helped organize games and Caleb manned the grill. Rachel called to sing happy birthday over FaceTime, and Emma showed her every single present in exhaustive detail. Later, after kids had been picked up and the yard was a disaster zone of torn wrapping paper and deflated balloons, Emma found Vivian cleaning up. "This was the best birthday ever," she said. "Yeah?" "Yeah, because you were here." Vivian's throat tightened. "I'm glad I was here too." "Vivian? Hmm? Are you going to marry my dad?" The question hung in the cooling evening air. "Would you want me to?" Vivian asked carefully. Emma considered this with her characteristic seriousness. "Yeah, I think so. You make him happy, and you make really good pancakes. Those are both important factors." "So will you?" "If your dad asks me, I'll say yes." Emma grinned and ran off to show Caleb her new bike for the 15th time. Vivian stood in their backyard in Portland, 3,000 miles from where she'd started, watching the man she loved teach his daughter to ride a bike in the fading light, and felt the last piece of armor fall away. She wasn't performing anymore. She was just living. And it was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Winter in Portland wasn't like Boston. The cold was different, wetter, softer, the kind that seeped into bones rather than slapping faces. Rain became their constant companion, drumming on rooftops, turning streets into mirrors, making the city smell like wet earth and possibility. Vivian thrived in it. Something about the gray suited her, gave her permission to shed the brightness she'd performed for so long. She wore rain boots and carried an umbrella covered in ducks that Emma had picked out. She studied at coffee shops where baristas knew her order. She was becoming someone new, or maybe someone she'd always been underneath. But not everything was smooth. December brought finals, and Emma's school winter concert, and a deadline for Caleb's biggest project of the year, all converging in the same catastrophic week. They moved through the house like ships passing in fog. Vivian buried in case studies, Caleb on endless conference calls, Emma practicing jingle bells on a recorder that sounded like dying geese. "I can't find my statistics notes," Vivian said on Tuesday evening, rifling through papers scattered across the dining room table. "Did you check your backpack?" Caleb asked, not looking up from his laptop. "Of course I checked my backpack. I'm not an idiot." "I didn't say you were." "You implied it." "I really didn't." Emma wandered in, recorder in hand. "Can someone help me with my math homework?" "Not now, buddy," Caleb said. "But it's due tomorrow." "Then you should have started it earlier." Emma's face crumpled. Vivian looked up from her paper storm. "Hey, come here," Vivian said gently. "I'll help you. Your dad's just stressed." "So are you," Emma pointed out. "Yeah, but I'm better at hiding it." After helping Emma through long division, a torture device disguised as mathematics, Vivian returned to find Caleb exactly where she'd left him, still typing, still frowning at his screen. "You need to eat something," she said. "I'll grab something later." "You said that 3 hours ago." "Vivian, I have a presentation at 8 a.m. I don't have time for basic human needs." "Great priority system." He finally looked up. "Are we fighting?" "I don't know. Are we? They stared at each other across the chaos of their shared space, both exhausted, both stretched too thin, both suddenly aware of how easy it would be to crack. "I'm sorry," Caleb said quietly. "I'm being an ass." "You're being stressed. There's a difference." "Still, you didn't sign up to manage 2 children. Emma's 8, you're 34. Technically very different levels of management." Despite everything, he smiled. "Make me a sandwich?" "What are you, 5? Please?" She made him a sandwich, turkey and Swiss the way he liked it, and sat with him while he ate, her statistics notes temporarily forgotten. They didn't talk, just existed together in the quiet, and it was enough to reset them. "We're going to be okay," she said. "I know, just have to get through this week." And then? And then Christmas, which we haven't planned at all. Vivian had forgotten about Christmas. Her first Christmas with them, Emma's first Christmas in Portland. The weight of it settled over her. "What do you normally do?" she asked. "Boston, we'd go to Rachel's, big family thing, chaotic but good." "And this year?" "This year we're 3,000 miles away and on our own." Emma appeared in the doorway, hovering. "Are we not doing Christmas?" "Of course we're doing Christmas," Vivian said quickly. "We're just figuring out what that looks like here." "Can we get a real tree?" Caleb and Vivian exchanged glances. "Sure," Caleb said. "Real tree it is." Emma brightened and disappeared back to her room, crisis averted. "A real tree," Caleb repeated. "Do you know how much mess those make?" "Nope, never had one." "Never?" "My grandmother had a fake one. My ex refused to deal with the hassle, so no, never a real tree." Something in Caleb's expression softened. "Then we're definitely getting a real tree." The Saturday before Christmas, they drove to a tree farm outside the city. Rain had paused, leaving everything dripping and green. Emma ran ahead through rows of firs and spruces, declaring each one perfect before moving to the next. "This is overwhelming," Vivian said, surrounded by approximately 10,000 identical trees. "You get used to it. The key is to let Emma think she's choosing while subtly guiding her towards something that'll fit in our living room." "Manipulation. Nice. Parenting. There's a difference." They settled on a 6-foot Douglas fir that Emma insisted had the best personality. The farm worker helped Caleb tie it to the roof of their car, a complicated process involving rope and prayer, and they drove home with pine needles trailing behind them like breadcrumbs. Getting the tree into the house proved harder than expected. It was too wide for the door, then too tall for the ceiling, then too heavy for the stand Caleb had bought. "This is a disaster," he muttered, pine sap covering his hands. "This is an adventure," Vivian corrected, holding the tree upright while he wrestled with the stand. Emma supervised with the authority of a foreman. "Left. No, your other left. Down a little. Too much. Back up." When they finally got it stable, all 3 of them stepped back. "It's leaning," Caleb observed. "It's perfect," Emma declared. "It's definitely leaning." "All trees lean a little, gives them character." Vivian laughed, the real kind from her belly. "She's right. It's perfect." They spent the evening decorating. Emma hung ornaments with the careful concentration of a surgeon. Caleb untangled lights that had somehow knotted themselves in storage. Vivian made hot chocolate and tried not to think about all the Christmases she'd spent alone or performing happiness for someone else's benefit. "You okay?" Caleb asked, finding her staring at the half-decorated tree. "Yeah, just... This is nice." "It is." "I keep waiting for something to go wrong." "Nothing's gonna go wrong. You can't know that." "No, but I can believe it anyway." She leaned into him, his arm coming around her shoulders, and watched Emma hang a crooked star made from popsicle sticks and glitter. "She made that in kindergarten," Caleb said. "Insisted it has to go on top of the tree every year." "It's beautiful. It's a disaster, but it's her disaster. Best kind." Christmas morning arrived gray and wet, rain pattering against windows while they opened presents in pajamas. Emma got books and art supplies and a microscope she immediately used to examine everything from her own hair to the dog hair on their couch, from the neighbor's golden retriever who visited sometimes. Caleb gave Vivian a necklace, simple, silver, with a small V pendant. It's not your grandmother's, he said as she opened it. But I thought you might want something that's just yours. Something that represents who you are now, not who you were. She couldn't speak, just held it and tried not to cry. Do you like it? He asked, suddenly uncertain. I love it. Help me put it on? His fingers were warm against her neck as he fastened the clasp. She touched the pendant, feeling its weight, light but present, there but not heavy, like her new life. I got you something too, she said, pulling out a small wrapped box. Inside was a watch, nothing flashy, but quality, the kind that would last. Your old one stopped working 6 months ago, she said. You keep checking your phone for the time like a teenager. This seemed more adult. He laughed, strapping it on. It's perfect, thank you. Emma insisted they all wear their new things to breakfast, so they ate waffles wearing a necklace, a watch, and in Emma's case, fuzzy socks with dinosaurs that roared when you walked. Rachel called mid-morning, the connection crackling with distance and too many relatives shouting in the background. How's Portland Christmas? She asked. Quiet. Good. Different, Caleb said. Missing the chaos? A little, but this is nice too. We're building our own traditions. Good. You sound happy. I am. And Vivian? He glanced over at where Vivian was helping Emma set up her microscope. She's good. Really good. I'm glad. Tell her Merry Christmas from the Chaos Brigade. After they hung up, Emma discovered that snowflakes under microscope were literally the coolest thing ever invented and insisted everyone take turns looking. Caleb dutifully examined frozen droplets while making appropriate impressed noises. Vivian actually found it fascinating, the intricate patterns that existed for seconds before melting. Everything's beautiful up close, Emma declared, even boring stuff. That's very philosophical, buddy, Caleb said. What's Phil so Phil? It means you're thinking deep thoughts. Oh, then yeah, I'm being that. That night, after Emma crashed from sugar and excitement, Vivian and Caleb sat by their crooked tree, lights twinkling in the dark. Best Christmas ever, Vivian said. Better than when you were a kid? My grandmother tried, but we didn't have much, and after she died, my parents didn't really do holidays. Then my ex turned them into performances. So yeah, this is the best. We'll make it better next year. It doesn't need to be better. It just needs to be this. He pulled her close, and they sat in the quiet dark, listening to rain and distant sirens and the soft sounds of their life together. January brought winter term and Vivian's first field placement. 3 days a week, she worked at New Beginnings, shadowing a licensed clinical social worker named Patricia, who was 53, tough as leather, and had seen everything twice. First rule, Patricia said on Vivian's first day, you can't save everyone. Second rule, you try anyway. Vivian learned to sit with discomfort, to hear stories that made her stomach turn and keep her face neutral, to ask hard questions and wait through difficult silences, to recognize when someone was ready to change and when they needed more time. She was good at it, better than she'd expected. Her own history gave her credibility that textbooks couldn't provide. When women asked if she really understood, she could say yes and mean it. One February afternoon, Amy, the woman who'd reminded Vivian of herself, came back. I left him, she said without preamble. Yeah? Took the kids and went to my sister's, filed a restraining order, got a lawyer. How are you doing? Amy's laugh was bitter. Terrified, broke, sleeping on my sister's couch, but I'm not getting hit anymore, so there's that. That's everything, Vivian said quietly. You make it sound easy. It's not easy. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do, but it's worth it. How long until it gets better? Vivian thought about her own timeline. Depends on your version of better. You'll have good days and bad days. Some days you'll want to go back. Some days you'll wonder why you stayed so long. Eventually, the good days outnumber the bad. How long did it take you? A couple years, but everyone's different. Amy nodded, absorbing this. Thank you for being honest. That's all I can be. After Amy left, Patricia found Vivian in the break room. You're good with them, she observed. I've been them. I know. That's why you're good. But don't let it consume you. You have to maintain boundaries or this work will eat you alive. How do you do it? Maintain boundaries after 20 years? Patricia considered this. I go home to my wife. I garden. I have a life outside these walls. You need that too. Don't make this work your whole identity. Vivian thought about Caleb and Emma waiting at home, about the life they were building. I won't. But it was harder than she expected. The stories followed her home. She'd lie awake at night thinking about the women she'd met, wondering if they were safe, if they'd find their way out, if she'd said the right things. You're thinking too loud, Caleb murmured one night, half asleep beside her. Sorry. Rough day? Just hard to turn it off. He pulled her closer. Tell me about it. I can't. Confidentiality. Then tell me how it made you feel. So she did. She talked about the weight of other people's pain, about wanting to fix things she couldn't control, about the fear that she wasn't enough. You're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, Caleb said when she finished. Showing up, being present, caring. That's enough. What if it's not? Then you keep showing up anyway. That's all any of us can do. She fell asleep in his arms, and when the nightmares came, and they did come, other people's traumas mixing with her own, he held her through them. March brought Emma's spring break and a decision that had been brewing for months. They'd been living together for over a year. They'd moved across the country. They'd built a life. But they hadn't made it official. Caleb brought it up on a Saturday morning while Vivian was studying at the kitchen table. I want to talk about something, he said. She looked up from her textbook on trauma-informed care. Okay. Don't freak out. Starting with don't freak out makes people freak out. Fair point. He sat down across from her. I want to marry you. Vivian's heart stopped. What? I want to marry you. I don't have a ring yet because I wanted to talk to you first. Make sure that's something you'd even want. But I'm ready. I've been ready. Caleb, you don't have to answer now. I just wanted you to know where I am. Where I've been honestly for months. She stared at him, this man who'd taken her mess and called it beautiful, who'd given her a home when she'd forgotten what that word meant. I'm divorced, she said. I'm 42. I'm still in school. I have debt and a history, and I wake you up with nightmares. Okay. That doesn't bother you? Vivian, I knew all of that when I fell in love with you. It's not going to suddenly bother me now. Marriage is different. It's legal. It's permanent. It's a commitment we're already living. I just want to make it official, but only if you want that too. She thought about her first marriage, the way it had felt like a cage, the way she'd lost herself in trying to be what someone else needed, the fear that history would repeat. I need time, she said. Take all the time you need. That's it? You're not going to push? What would be the point? I want you to marry me because you want to, not because I pressured you into it. She reached across the table and took his hands. I love you. You know that, right? I know. I'm just scared. I know that too. Give me a few weeks to think. Take a few months if you need. I'm not going anywhere. That night she called Rachel. He asked you to marry him? Rachel's squeal nearly deafened her. He said he wanted to. He doesn't have a ring yet. He wanted to make sure I'd say yes first. That's very Caleb, thoughtful to a fault. What did you say? That I needed time to think. Are you going to say yes? I don't know. I want to, but I'm terrified. Of what? Repeating my mistakes, losing myself again, finding out that happy endings don't exist outside of movies. Rachel was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? I've known my brother for 34 years. I've seen him in love once before, with Emma's mom. This isn't that. What he has with you is different, deeper. He's not trying to fix you or change you. He just wants to build a life with you. How do you know? Because I've watched you two together. The way he looks at you isn't I need you, it's I choose you. There's a difference. After they hung up, Vivian sat in the dark living room, thinking. She thought about the woman she'd been, performing happiness, hiding pain, surviving instead of living. She thought about the woman she was becoming, strong enough to be vulnerable, brave enough to trust, whole enough to share herself without losing herself. She thought about Caleb, who'd seen her at her worst and stayed, who'd driven across the country because she needed a fresh start, who'd held her through nightmares and celebrated her victories and made her believe that love didn't have to hurt. She thought about Emma, who'd welcomed her without hesitation, who called her when she needed help with homework, who drew pictures of their family with 3 people in a crooked house and a dog they didn't even have yet. 2 weeks later, she found Caleb in their bedroom, folding laundry with the concentration of someone trying to solve a complex equation. "Yes," she said. He looked up. "Yes, what?" "Yes, I'll marry you, if the offer's still open." He dropped the shirt he was holding. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm sure about you, about us, about wanting to try." He crossed to her in 2 steps and kissed her, deep and certain and full of promise. "I don't have a ring," he said when they broke apart. "I don't need a ring. I just need you." "You're going to get one anyway. Emma will insist. She takes these things very seriously." "You told Emma?" "I asked her permission first, before I talked to you. She said yes immediately, then asked if that meant you'd legally have to make pancakes forever." Vivian laughed, the sound lighter than air. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd put it in the vows." They told Emma that night over pizza. "So you're getting married?" she asked, carefully extracting pepperoni from her slice. "Yeah," Caleb said. "Is that okay with you?" Emma looked up, serious. "Does that mean Vivian's going to be my mom?" The question hung in the air. Vivian's throat tightened. "I'll never replace your birth mother," she said carefully, "but I can be someone who loves you and takes care of you, if you want that." Emma thought about this. "Can I call you Vivian Mom?" "You can call me whatever feels right." "Okay, Vivian Mom. When's the wedding?" "We haven't planned that yet." "Can I wear a fancy dress?" "Absolutely. And can we have cake?" "Definitely cake." Emma nodded, satisfied, and went back to her pizza. Just like that, their family of 3 became official. They decided on a small ceremony, just family and close friends. Rachel flew out with her kids. Marcus came with his boyfriend. Patricia from New Beginnings attended, along with a few of Caleb's co-workers who'd become friends. They got married in April in a small park overlooking the river, with Emma as their flower girl and cherry blossoms falling like snow. Vivian wore a simple blue dress. Caleb wore the same suit from the gala where they'd met because Vivian said it was lucky. The vows were short. Caleb promised to hold her through the hard parts and celebrate the good ones. Vivian promised to let him, to trust him with her broken pieces and her healing ones. "And I promise," Caleb added, going off script, "to always appreciate your pancakes." "And I promise," Vivian said, laughing through tears, "to make them whenever you want." Emma handed them rings, simple gold bands they'd picked out together. When the officiant said, "You may kiss," and they did, Emma cheered louder than anyone. At the reception, a restaurant overlooking the city, Rachel pulled Vivian aside. "Welcome to the family, officially this time. Thanks for letting me in. You've been in since that first dinner in Boston. We were just waiting for you to realize it." They danced and ate and laughed. Emma fell asleep on a pile of coats in the corner, exhausted from being the center of attention. Caleb and Vivian swayed on the small dance floor, her head on his shoulder, his arms around her waist. "Happy?" he asked. "Terrified. But yeah, happy." "Good terrified or bad terrified?" "Good. The kind that means something matters." A smart woman I know once told me that. She sounds wise. She is. I married her. When the night ended and they drove home, Emma asleep in the back seat, wedding clothes rumpled, makeup smeared, Vivian looked at the ring on her finger and felt something settle into place. She'd spent so long believing she didn't deserve this, that happiness was for other people, that her past had disqualified her from futures like this. But here she was, married to a good man, stepmother to an incredible kid, building a career helping people who needed someone to believe in them the way Caleb had believed in her. "What are you thinking?" Caleb asked, pulling into their driveway. "That I used to think my story was over, that the best parts were behind me. And now? Now I think it's just beginning." He kissed her softly. "Same." They carried Emma inside together, tucked her into bed still in her flower girl dress because she looked too peaceful to wake. Then they collapsed onto their own bed, too tired to change, too happy to care. "We did it," Vivian whispered. "We did. What now?" "Now we just live. Together." Sounds perfect. And it was. Not because everything was easy, not because all their problems disappeared, but because they'd chosen each other, and they kept choosing each other, and that made all the difference. The months after the wedding settled into something Vivian had never experienced before. Ordinary happiness. Not the performed kind, not the temporary kind, but the daily accumulation of small joys that built into something solid. She finished her first year of graduate school with a 3.8 GPA. Emma lost her first tooth and left it under her pillow with a note asking the tooth fairy if she took credit cards. Caleb got promoted to senior engineer, which meant more money and slightly fewer 70-hour weeks. They adopted a rescue dog named Biscuit, who was part lab, part chaos, and entirely Emma's best friend. Life wasn't perfect. The house needed repairs they couldn't afford. Student loans loomed. Emma had nightmares sometimes about her birth mother, a woman she barely remembered but whose absence left marks. Vivian still woke some nights in a cold sweat, her ex-husband's voice echoing in her head, telling her she was worthless. But Caleb was always there, pulling her back to the present, reminding her that voice was a ghost with no power anymore. Summer arrived hot and dry, unusual for Portland. They spent weekends at the river, Emma and Biscuit splashing in shallow water while Vivian studied under a tree, and Caleb pretended to read, but mostly just watched them. "You're staring," Vivian said without looking up from her textbook. "I'm appreciating." Creepy. Romantic. Thin line. He grinned and went back to his book. Or pretending to, anyway. In August, Vivian started her second-year placement at a residential treatment facility for women with substance abuse issues. The work was harder, the stories more complicated. These women weren't just escaping abuse. They were fighting addiction, mental illness, homelessness, all layered together in ways that defied simple solutions. Her supervisor was a woman named Dr. Chen, no relation to Detective Chen or Marcus Chen, as she was quick to clarify, who was 60, blunt as a hammer, and brilliant. "You're too emotionally invested," Dr. Chen told her after observing a session where Vivian had clearly been holding back tears. "I thought empathy was important." "Empathy? Yes. Absorption? No. You're taking their pain into your body. That's not sustainable." "How do I stop?" "You learn to hold space for their suffering without making it yours. It's a practice, not a destination." Vivian tried. Some days she succeeded. Other days she came home and cried in the shower while Caleb made dinner and Emma did homework, and life continued around her grief for people she couldn't save. One September evening, she came home to find Emma at the kitchen table, face stormy. "What's wrong, buddy?" Vivian asked, setting down her bag. "Nothing." The universal child code for everything. Vivian sat down. "Want to talk about it?" "No." "Want to sit here and be mad together?" Emma looked up, considering. "Maybe." They sat in silence. Biscuit wandered over and put his head on Emma's lap, sensing distress with the supernatural ability of dogs. "Lily said you're not my real mom," Emma said finally. Vivian's heart cracked. "Who's Lily?" "A girl in my class. She said real moms are the ones who have the baby, and you didn't have me, so you don't count." "What did you say?" "That she was wrong. But then she asked if my real mom loved me. Why did she leave?" Vivian wanted to find this Lily child and have a very serious conversation about kindness. Instead, she took a slow breath. "Can I tell you something?" "Yeah. Family isn't just biology. It's about who shows up, who loves you, who's there when you're scared or sick or happy or sad. By that definition, I'm absolutely your mom. Maybe not the one who gave birth to you, but the one who's here, and that counts." "But why did my birth mom leave?" This was the question Vivian had been dreading since the day she'd moved in. The question only Caleb could fully answer, and he wasn't here. He was at a late meeting, wouldn't be home for another hour. "I don't know the whole story," Vivian said carefully. "That's something you should talk to your dad about. But I can tell you this, sometimes people aren't ready to be parents. Sometimes they're too young or too scared or dealing with things that make it impossible to care for a child the way they deserve. That's not about you. It's about her." "Do you think she ever thinks about me?" "I imagine she does. I can't imagine forgetting someone like you." Emma absorbed this. "I'm glad you stayed." Vivian pulled her into a hug, fierce and tight. "Me too, baby. Me too." When Caleb got home and heard about the conversation, He found Emma in her room and had what he called the talk, the age-appropriate version of why Sarah had left, why she'd chosen not to be part of Emma's life, and how none of that was Emma's fault. Vivian listened from the hallway, not eavesdropping exactly, but making sure Emma was okay. "You've got me," Caleb said, "and you've got Vivian, and Aunt Rachel and Marcus and Grandma and Grandpa in Providence. You've got so many people who love you, Emma. That's what matters." "I know," Emma said, voice small. "I just wish I knew why she didn't want me." Sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense to anyone, including themselves. But that choice was about her, not about you. You're extraordinary. Anyone who doesn't see that is missing out. That night, after Emma was asleep, Caleb found Vivian in their bedroom, staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked. "I hate that she's dealing with this. She's 8. She should be worried about homework and whether Biscuit likes her better than us, not whether her birth mother loved her." "I know. But she's strong. She'll work through it." "What if Lily keeps saying things? What if other kids? Then we'll handle it. We'll talk to her teacher. We'll keep having these conversations. We'll remind her that she's loved. That's all we can do." Vivian leaned into him. "I wanted to tell Emma that her birth mother was an idiot for leaving, that she missed out on the best kid in the world." "Why didn't you?" "Because that's not my story to tell. And because I don't want Emma to think there's something wrong with her mother for leaving. Kids internalize that." "You're good at this." "At what?" "Being her mom." The word still felt too big, too important, like she might break it by claiming it too loudly. "I'm trying." "You're succeeding." October brought midterms and Emma's school fundraiser and the news that Meridian Tech was shutting down Caleb's department. They were restructuring, outsourcing, pivoting, all the corporate buzzwords that meant people were losing their jobs. Caleb came home white-faced. "They're letting me go," he said, standing in the doorway like he'd forgotten how to move further into his own house. Vivian looked up from her laptop. "What?" "Whole department, 60 days severance, healthcare through the end of the year, and a good reference. But I'm done." She closed her computer. "Come here." He sat down heavily on the couch. Biscuit immediately jumped up, sensing crisis, and put his head on Caleb's lap. "I don't understand," Caleb said. "My performance reviews were excellent. I was just promoted. How can they? Because corporations are amoral entities that care about profit margins, not people. I have a family to support. We'll figure it out." "How?" "You're still in school. We just bought new tires for the car. The water heater's making that sound again. Emma needs braces soon. How are we going to—" "Caleb, breathe." He did, shakily. "We have 60 days severance," Vivian said. "You're a senior engineer with a great portfolio. You'll find something." "What if I don't?" "Then we adapt. I can take more hours at my placement. We can defer some expenses. We can ask Rachel for help if we need to." "I don't want to ask Rachel for help. Pride doesn't feed families." He looked at her, some of the panic clearing from his eyes. "When did you get so practical?" "When I spent 3 years surviving on nothing but stubbornness and recycled cover stories. This is temporary. We'll get through it. You sound very sure." "One of us has to be." Over the next weeks, Caleb threw himself into job searching with the intensity he'd previously reserved for debugging code. Applications, networking calls, recruiter meetings. His LinkedIn profile got optimized. His resume got workshopped. He did practice interviews with Vivian until she could recite his answers to common questions in her sleep. Nothing landed. The tech market had shifted. Everyone was hiring remote workers in countries where they could pay a fraction of American salaries. The jobs that existed wanted younger, cheaper, more desperate candidates. "I'm 35, Caleb said one night in November, staring at another rejection email. "When did I become too old?" "You're not too old. The market's just oversaturated." "Same thing." "It's not." "Vivian, I've sent out 73 applications. I've had 12 phone screens, 4 interviews, and 0 offers. At what point do we admit I'm unemployable?" "Never. Because you're brilliant and experienced and exactly what any smart company would want." "Then why doesn't anyone want me?" She didn't have an answer to that. By December, Caleb's severance was running out. The savings they'd built was shrinking. They cut expenses, no more eating out, no unnecessary purchases. Emma's birthday party would be small and homemade. Vivian picked up extra hours doing intake paperwork at New Beginnings. It wasn't much, but it helped. The stress bled into everything. Caleb was short-tempered, anxious, spiraling. Vivian was stretched too thin between school, work, and trying to hold their household together. Emma sensed the tension and became clingy, needing more reassurance, more attention, more everything they didn't have bandwidth to give. "I'm failing," Caleb said one night, after Emma had finally fallen asleep following an hour of afraid of the dark negotiations. "I can't provide for my family." "You're not failing. You're going through a hard time. There's a difference." "I should have seen this coming, saved more, been smarter." "You can't predict corporate restructuring." "I should have been indispensable." "Nobody's indispensable. That's not how this works." He put his head in his hands. "I don't know what to do." Vivian sat beside him, thinking. An idea had been forming for weeks, but she'd been afraid to voice it. Now seemed like the time. "What if we left Portland?" she said quietly. He looked up. "What?" "Your parents are in Providence. Rachel's in Boston. Maybe we go back east. You'd have more job opportunities, lower cost of living, family support." "You just got settled here. Your program, your job." "Can transfer." Most MSW programs have reciprocity agreements, and New Beginnings would understand. "I can't ask you to uproot again." "You're not asking. I'm offering." "Vivian, we're a team, remember? Your problems are my problems. If moving helps us, then we move." He stared at her like she'd just offered him oxygen underwater. "You'd do that?" "I'd do anything for us. For this family." That night they researched transfer policies for her graduate program, job markets in Providence and Boston, cost of living comparisons, schools for Emma. By 2 a.m., they had a plan. They'd move back east in January. Vivian would transfer to Boston College's MSW program. Caleb would have a much larger job market to pull from. Emma would be closer to Rachel and her cousins. They'd rent for a while, rebuild their savings, figure things out. It wasn't ideal, but it was forward motion, and that was something. They told Emma over breakfast. "We're moving again?" She looked stricken. "I know it's hard," Caleb said, "but I like my school. I like my friends. I like my room and Biscuit's vet and the park where we go." "I know, buddy. We like those things too." "Then why are we leaving?" Vivian took this one. "Because sometimes families have to make hard choices. Daddy needs to find a new job, and there are more opportunities back east. Plus, you'd be near Aunt Rachel and your cousins." "I don't want to be near them. I want to stay here." She ran to her room, Biscuit trailing behind, leaving Caleb and Vivian staring at each other across the breakfast table. "That went well," Caleb said. "Give her time." "What if she's right? What if we're making a mistake?" "Then we'll make it together and figure it out on the other side." Emma came around eventually. Rachel's promise of frequent sleepovers helped. The idea of snow, which Portland rarely got, appealed to her 8-year-old sense of adventure. But mostly, Vivian thought, Emma was resilient in the way children are when they don't have another choice. They packed up their Portland life in January. The little house with the crooked tree, the neighborhood coffee shop where baristas knew Vivian's order, the park where Emma had learned to ride her bike. All of it boxed up and loaded into another rental truck for another cross-country journey. "Déjà vu," Vivian said, looking at the loaded truck. "At least this time we know what we're getting into," Caleb replied. "Do we?" "No, but we're better at pretending." The drive back east took 5 days through winter storms and icy highways. They stopped at the same cheap motels, ate at the same roadside diners, Emma asleep in the back seat while Caleb and Vivian traded driving shifts and quiet conversations. "Scared?" he asked somewhere in Nebraska. "Terrified." "You?" "Same, but also hopeful." "Yeah?" "We've done this before. We survived. We'll survive again." "When did you get so optimistic?" "When I married someone who taught me that survival is just the beginning." They landed in Providence, moving into a small rental house near his parents. It was older, smaller, needed work, but it was cheap and close to family and good enough for now. Vivian transferred to Boston College and picked up where she'd left off. The commute was brutal, an hour each way on the T, but the program was solid and her credits transferred cleanly. She found a new placement at a women's shelter in Cambridge that reminded her of new beginnings, but grittier, more urban, more raw. Caleb finally caught a break in February. A startup in Cambridge needed a senior engineer who could work across multiple platforms. The pay was less than Meridian, the hours were worse, but it was steady employment with benefits. He took it. Emma enrolled in a school 3 blocks from their house. She made friends slowly at first, then all at once the way kids do. Rachel's daughter Maya was in her grade, and suddenly Emma had a built-in best friend and constant sleepover companion. By March, they'd found their rhythm again. Different from Portland, different from Boston the first time, but theirs. One evening in April, almost exactly 2 years after their wedding, Vivian came home to find Caleb in the kitchen, looking at his laptop with an odd expression. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting down her bag. "Nothing's wrong, but I need to tell you something." Her stomach dropped. "You're being cryptic." "The startup got acquired by a major tech company. Is that good or bad?" "It's very good. They're keeping the whole team, doubling salaries, offering equity. I'd make more than I did at Meridian." Vivian sat down hard. "Seriously? Seriously? Contract starts in May. So we're, okay? Financially? We're more than okay. We can actually save, maybe buy a house eventually. You could cut back your hours if you wanted, focus on school." She started laughing, the kind that bordered on hysteria. After all of that, all the stress and fear and moving and uncertainty, we're just okay now? Seems like it. That's anticlimactic. Want me to create some drama? I could quit and we could move to Alaska. Don't you dare! He pulled her into a hug, both of them shaking with laughter and relief and the bone-deep exhaustion of people who'd been holding their breath too long. "We made it," Vivian whispered. "We did." That spring brought change in other ways. Vivian got accepted into a competitive research fellowship focusing on trauma and recovery. Emma joined soccer and discovered she was terrible at it but loved it anyway. They adopted a second rescue dog, an elderly beagle named Winston who was half-blind and entirely devoted to sleeping. In May, Vivian walked across the stage at Boston College and accepted her MSW diploma. Caleb and Emma sat in the audience, cheering so loudly that people turned around to see who'd accomplished such an amazing feat that warranted that level of noise. "I'm so proud of you," Caleb said afterward, diploma in hand, taking pictures Emma insisted they needed. "It was just school. It was you rebuilding yourself into exactly who you wanted to be." She looked at the diploma, Master of Social Work, her name in formal script, proof that she'd done it. That the girl who'd been abused and divorced and lost, who'd worked as an escort to survive, who'd thought her best days were behind her, that girl had become this woman, licensed, credentialed, qualified to help others rebuild their own lives. "What now?" Emma asked, always practical. "Now I take my licensing exam, and then I start my real career." "What's a real career?" "It's when you get to do the work you love and get paid enough to live." "That sounds made up." Vivian laughed. "It kind of does, doesn't it?" She passed her licensing exam in July on her first try. By August, she had a job offer from the Department of Children and Families working with families in crisis. It wasn't glamorous, the pay was decent but not great. But it mattered, and that was everything. Her first day, she sat in her tiny office, really more of a cubicle with delusions of grandeur, and stared at her nameplate. Vivian Dawson, LCSW. Her own name, her earned credentials, her real life. Patricia from New Beginnings had sent flowers with a card that read, "You've got this. Second rule, remember? You try anyway." One afternoon in September, Vivian got assigned a new case. A woman named Jennifer, 40 years old, recently divorced, struggling to find work. The intake notes mentioned a history of domestic abuse and a 3-year employment gap. Vivian recognized the story before she met the person. Jennifer came to their first meeting defensive, apologetic, certain she was wasting everyone's time. "I don't know why I'm here," she said. "I'm fine. I just need to get back on my feet." Vivian smiled gently. "Can I tell you something?" "Okay. 7 years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are. Divorced from an abusive husband. No job. No prospects. Convinced I was worthless." Jennifer's eyes widened. "You? Me? And I know every excuse you're telling yourself about why it's different, why you're really fine, why you don't need help. I told myself those same lies. What changed? I met someone who believed I could be more than my worst moments. And eventually, I started believing it too. They talked for an hour. Vivian shared resources, made referrals, built a safety plan. But more than that, she offered something she desperately needed and rarely received, someone who'd walked the path and survived to tell about it. After Jennifer left, Vivian sat at her desk and cried. Happy tears this time, the kind that came from purpose fulfilled. This was why she'd survived. To be this person for someone else. That October, on a weekend afternoon when Emma was at Maya's and the house was quiet, Caleb found Vivian in their bedroom, looking through old photos on her phone. "What you doing?" he asked. "Looking at where we started." She showed him pictures from that first dinner in the North End with Emma. The three of them crammed into his Boston apartment, their wedding day. Moving to Portland, coming back east. "We've had a weird journey," he observed. The weirdest. If someone had told me that night at the gala that I'd end up here, married to you, raising Emma, working my dream job, I'd have thought they were insane. "Would you change anything?" She thought about it, the hard parts, the scared parts, the moments she'd wanted to give up. No, because all of it led here. Even the escort work? It was the first time he'd brought it up in years, the thing they both knew about but rarely discussed, like an old scar that had healed but remained visible. "Even that," she said. "I'm not proud of it. But I'm not ashamed anymore either. It was survival. It was what I needed to do to get from there to here. You know I never judged you for it. I know. But I judged myself. Took me a long time to stop." He pulled her close. "For the record, I think you're extraordinary. Everything you've overcome, everything you've built. It's remarkable. We built it together." "Yeah, we did." They sat in comfortable silence, years of history between them, years of future ahead. "Caleb?" "Yeah?" "I'm happy. Is that allowed? To just be happy without waiting for the other shoe to drop?" He kissed her forehead. "It's absolutely allowed." That November, they hosted Thanksgiving at their house for the first time. Rachel and her family, Caleb's parents, Marcus and his boyfriend, who was visiting from Seattle. 13 people crammed into their small dining room, elbows bumping, conversation overlapping, chaos and warmth in equal measure. Emma sat between Vivian and Maya, giggling about something only 8-year-olds found hilarious. Caleb carved the turkey with the concentration of a surgeon. Rachel made inappropriate jokes that made her mother gasp and everyone else laugh. Vivian looked around the table, at this family they'd built, this life they'd fought for, and felt gratitude so intense it almost hurt. "What are you thinking about?" Caleb's mother asked, catching her expression. "Just how lucky I am." "We're the lucky ones. You've been so good for Caleb, for Emma, for all of us." "Thank you," Vivian said, meaning it more than the woman could know. After everyone left and Emma had crashed from sugar and excitement, Caleb found Vivian doing dishes. "Leave them," he said. "They'll still be dirty in the morning." "That's disgusting." "That's practical. Come outside with me." She dried her hands and followed him to their small backyard. November in New England was cold, sharp, the kind of weather that made breath visible. They stood under the bare oak tree, city lights creating a dull glow above them. "Remember Portland?" Caleb asked. "That hill we climbed with Emma?" "Of course." "You told me you wanted forever. Not survival, not a temporary chapter, but forever." "I remember." "Is that still true?" She looked at him, this man who'd taken a chance on a woman pretending to be his girlfriend, who'd seen past the performance to the person underneath, who'd loved her through every iteration of herself. "More true now than then," she said. "Good. Because I want forever too. Every complicated, messy, beautiful day of it." He kissed her under bare branches and city light, and Vivian thought about the woman she'd been, the one who'd believed love meant losing yourself, who'd survived by performing, who'd forgotten what authentic joy felt like. That woman was gone. In her place stood someone stronger, someone who'd learned that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that asking for help wasn't failure, that starting over at 40 wasn't the end of the story, but the beginning of a better one. A single father who'd thought his life was finished discovered it was just paused. A woman who'd learned to perform connection found someone who wanted her without conditions. And together, They built something neither could have imagined alone. They walked back inside, where Emma was sprawled on the couch with both dogs, some animated movie playing on mute. Vivian sat down, and Emma immediately curled into her side. "Love you, Vivian, Mom," Emma mumbled, half asleep. "Love you too, baby." Caleb settled on Emma's other side, and they stayed like that. The three of them and two ridiculous dogs, a family built from broken pieces and second chances, and the stubborn belief that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. Outside, November wind rattled the windows. Inside, warmth and safety, and the quiet confidence of people who'd survived their worst and found their way to something better. This was what forever looked like. Not perfect, but real. Not easy, but worth it. And in the end, that made all the difference. Years later, when people asked how they met, Caleb and Vivian would exchange glances and smile. The truth was too complicated for casual conversation. A corporate gala, a professional arrangement, a desperate gamble that somehow transformed into the most authentic thing either had known. "We met through work," one of them would say, "and the rest is history," the other would add. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was true enough. The real story, the messy, complicated, beautiful story of two broken people learning to be whole together, that was theirs alone. A private miracle, a second chance seized with both hands and held tight. They'd survived alone, but they'd chosen to thrive together. And under an open sky, with a child's laughter echoing in the distance and a future stretching wide before them, they kept choosing each other. Not because it was easy, because it was real.